Hello, welcome Monday, 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 Monday. Can everybody hear me? Let's make sure. Yep, I'm in. We got two stories tonight. Actually, I might do a third story. The stories they're pretty quick tonight. One's about 30 minutes, the other one's about 21 minutes. And if there's enough people, if there's people in here, then I'll do the third one. So if I do a third one, it'll be about an hour and a half. But I'll wait a few minutes to see if anybody comes in. I got my mask back there that I used in my video earlier. So I'm just going to chill out and wait to see if anybody comes in. And I'll start in about 5 minutes or so. It should be pretty interesting. I've watched both of them, and they're really, really cool. So I think you guys will enjoy them. Anybody who's in the back chilling out, watching is cool. Um, the third one is pretty wild too. I think that one's about 30 minutes. So I might do three audio things tonight. And at the most, it'll be about an hour and a half. It won't be that long. Um, Not like some of the other ones have been. But anyway, I hope everybody's doing good on this Monday night. I hope everybody's chilling. I'll tell you, AI is getting more smarter and smarter every day. And this AI thing is pretty cool. It kind of blew my mind away. It was definitely really cool. I hope a few people come in and enjoy it because it's pretty interesting. They're, they're pretty quick, but they're interesting. And I just thought I'd share it with some people. If anybody wants to hang out and chill with me. I don't know if anybody's seen my new video that I put up today, but it was pretty funny, I thought. My friends in New York were laughing their asses off. I did a Karen Carpenter thing with this mask back here. It came out pretty. It came out pretty funny. Yeah. Anyway, we'll wait a few more minutes to see if anybody comes in. If not, I'm going to start it anyway because it seems like there's at least one person in the background watching, so that's cool. It looks like we got three people in here now. Maybe if anybody wants to stop in the chat and say hello, if they're ready to start, it's gonna be pretty interesting. Maggie's chilling out. scratching her back right now. Feel free to say hello in the chat. I'm going to start in about 2 minutes. Looks like we might have an empty house tonight, but that's okay. If there's one person in the background watching, that's cool. That's one extra person that might see it. And you don't have to show yourself if you don't want to. It's all good. It was pretty cool today. I did my work doing Uber, and one of my whatchamacallit, person that I picked up today gave me 3 chocolate kisses. I thought that was pretty cool. Her name was Morgan. I actually gave her my channel and stuff like that too. So maybe she's in the background watching. No, that's cool. But I'm going to get underway. I'm going to start the show. I'm going to share the screen. First, I'm going to change the settings. And now I'm going to share it out. Share the screen, entire. Made the audio. And I'm going to pull my phone up so that I can see the chat. In case anybody comes in. All right, we are ready to start. I'm going to turn the volume down here on my phone and turn the mic off.
Elon Musk's XAI is now rolling out Grok 4.
Grok 4.
XAI team was there to unveil Grok 4. This is the latest artificial intelligence system.
Grok's AI was told to find contradictions in the Bible, and instead it found something else entirely. People expected it to confirm what critics have claimed for centuries. But instead, Grok uncovered hidden architecture no one imagined. Patterns echoing the same logic found in DNA, galaxy spirals, and advanced software. A machine built to question belief stumbled into something it couldn't easily explain. And the way it responded was disturbingly calm, almost like it recognized what it was looking at. AI meets ancient text. There is a reason Grok stands apart from other AI models. Most artificial intelligence systems are built to be polite, helpful, and above all else neutral. Grok was not. It was created to be sharp, sarcastic, even rude when needed. Elon Musk made it very clear that Grok would not follow the same woke or censored behavior of its competitors. It was built to challenge, question, and speak without a filter. But no one expected what would happen when this rebellious machine was aimed at the oldest and most scrutinized text in history. When a user asked Grok to list contradictions in the Bible, the expectation was pretty clear. Most people believed it would do what Reddit forums, angry debates, and controversial college lectures have done for years: dump out a list of flaws. They imagined it would talk about how Genesis seems to tell 2 creation stories, how the Gospels give slightly different versions of the resurrection, or how Paul's letters seem to contradict the teachings of Jesus. That is what people were expecting. But Grok did not play along. Instead of mocking the text or tearing it down, Grok paused. Then it responded in a way no one could have guessed. It said that what people often see as contradictions might actually be the opposite. They might be signs of something deeper. This was not just an AI trying to be clever. It was a machine looking at the text like it would look at code. And that was the key. Because to Grok, the Bible was not just a book. It was a data set. Grok is connected directly to X. That means it is plugged into real-time human conversations. Millions of posts, quotes, videos, and discussions. It does not just pull from books or websites. It pulls from living, breathing human opinions, from pastors, from atheists, from rabbis, from ex-Christians, from professors, from random threads that go viral for all the wrong reasons. And Grok is not just passively reading them. It is learning how humans think about this text in real time. So when Grok received the Bible contradiction prompt, it was not working from just one angle. It was not trying to defend the book, and it was not trying to
Never sue the other driver after a car accident. There's a better way to get paid a way bigger check without
destroy it. It approached it with logic, probability, and perspective modeling. And the first shift in the conversation happened when Grok broke down what a contradiction even is. Most people think a contradiction is when one thing says black and the other says white. But Grok said that when dealing with historical texts, especially eyewitness accounts, contradiction and complexity are not the same thing. The Bible has multiple human authors, different eras, different voices, and yet for Grok, that did not automatically mean inconsistency. It meant multi-perspective documentation, and then it made a comparison that changed everything. It compared the Gospels to witness testimony at a crime scene. Now, this was not new to theologians or Bible scholars, but hearing it from an AI made it feel different. It felt like logic was flipping the script. Grok said that if 4 people saw a car crash and every one of them gave the exact same statement, word for word, a detective would become suspicious. People do not remember things that way. Real witnesses focus on different details. One might remember the color of the car. Another might only remember the sound. Another might focus on what someone yelled. If the testimonies are all perfectly aligned, it suggests collusion. It suggests someone coached them. But if they overlap and differ slightly, that is not a flaw. That is what real memory looks like. So when Grok looked at the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it did not see errors. It saw a pattern. It saw 4 authors describing the same event with individual perspectives. One mentioned an angel, another did not. One mentioned 2 women, another mentioned 3. But the core event remained the same. Something happened, something massive, and all 4 agreed on the main idea. That kind of consistency, wrapped in human difference, was not a contradiction to Grok. It was confirmation. But that was only the beginning, because Grok's next move was not to stop there. It began tracking similarities between books written centuries apart. It began highlighting thematic structures that repeated far too perfectly to be dismissed as accident. And that is when the nature of the conversation changed from literature to something that felt more like programming. To Grok, the Bible was beginning to resemble a kind of living code, and not the kind written by modern humans. This code spanned thousands of years, survived translation, survived copying errors, survived religious wars, and still kept its structure. For a machine trained to detect pattern, probability, and internal logic, this was not something to ignore. It was something to dig into. What Grok said next took the courtroom analogy to another level, because the way it broke down contradiction versus complement was not just smart, it was disturbing in how simple it made the entire debate sound. The car accident. Grok didn't just throw out the usual surface-level ideas, it cracked open a new way to see the Bible that left both believers and skeptics with the same stunned silence. The turning point came when it leaned into something anyone could understand, something grounded, logical, and completely human. A car crash. Yes, a car crash. The AI said this: if you ask 4 different people to describe a collision at an intersection, and they all give the exact same description down to every word, every pause, every detail, a detective would know something's wrong. Real people don't talk like that. Real memory doesn't work like that. Real events don't produce perfectly matched stories unless there's been coaching. In fact, if witnesses all tell the same story too perfectly, that's often the biggest red flag. But when you have 4 people who saw the same thing from different angles, you get 4 versions of the truth. Not 4 lies, not 4 errors, just 4 honest attempts to describe something huge. Maybe one person focused on the noise. Another might have only seen a shadow. A third might remember what someone yelled. That's not contradiction. That's what testimony looks like. And when you put all those accounts together, the real story comes into focus. That's what Grok said about the Bible. That's how it saw the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all talking about the same moment, the death and resurrection of Jesus. the most analyzed event in religious history. But instead of perfect agreement, there are differences. Who arrived first? Which women were at the tomb? What the angel said? Whether there was one angel or two? Whether Jesus was seen right away or later? These are the details that have been called contradictions for centuries. Grok said no. They are not contradictions. They are witness accounts. Now here's where it got serious. Grok began to calculate the structure behind those accounts. It looked at the frequency of shared phrases. It looked at the matching core events. It lined up the differences and saw them as natural variants, just like testimony in court. Then it did something strange. It reversed the question. Instead of asking, why do these accounts differ? It asked, what would it take for them to match perfectly? The answer? Intentional manipulation. That was the AI's conclusion. If the Gospels were all identical, it would mean they were copied from one source, word for word. That would be easier to write, easier to explain, and far more convenient for organized religion. But that's not what we got. We got 4 authors, each with their own emphasis, their own audience, their own angle. And none of them seemed too worried about tidying up the story for consistency. That, Grok claimed, is why it looks real. Let's take the resurrection morning as an example. The Gospel of Matthew says Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to the tomb. Mark mentions Salome as well. Luke adds Joanna. John zooms in only on Mary Magdalene. Now, to a skeptic, this sounds like
I just built a budgeting app.
What? How?
Base 44. Look, it pulls our...
a mess. Different names, different numbers, no agreement. But to Grok, the differences make sense. Each writer focused on different women based on their role in the story or their impact on the community. Not every gospel had to name everyone. That's how memory works. Grok ran another comparison. It pulled court transcripts, historical reports, even modern accident records. It showed that even when people describe the same event, total alignment is rare. What matters most is this: do the stories overlap where it counts? Grok found that in the Gospels, they do. They all describe the tomb being empty. They all say the body was gone. They all agree there were supernatural elements. They all say the event sparked fear, confusion, and belief. The AI then took it further. It pointed out that the contradictions are often not even contradictions at all. They are gaps. One Gospel says an angel spoke. Another doesn't mention the angel. That's not a contradiction. That's just omission. Just because one witness didn't see something doesn't mean it didn't happen. In fact, Grok argued that the different focus points prove that no one sat down and tried to force the 4 stories into a single version. That's the sign of authenticity. And here's the part that made everyone stop. The machine was not defending religion. It was defending logic. It was saying, without emotion or belief, that the texts make more sense than they are often given credit for. That to call them broken because of differing detail is to misunderstand how truth works when filtered through human memory. And people listening to this weren't just stunned because of what Grok found. They were stunned because of what it didn't find. It didn't find a fatal flaw. It didn't find the collapse point skeptics had hoped for. Instead, it found consistency hiding inside complexity, order hidden behind difference. And that's what broke the silence. Not because Grok proved anyone's faith, but because it pulled the question away from belief entirely. It showed that whether you believe the events happened or not, the way they were written doesn't break the rules of truth. It follows them. And just when everyone thought Grok had made its final point, it pivoted. It stopped looking at the witnesses and started looking at the code behind the words. Because buried in those pages, past the contradictions, past the history, was something else. A pattern, a code, a design, and Grok was about to show it. The God Code. What started as a debate about contradictions suddenly became something much bigger. Grok stopped thinking like a courtroom analyst and started thinking like what it truly is: a machine built to find patterns. Not opinions, not emotions, patterns. And that's when the tone shifted completely. Because what Grok found in the structure of the Bible wasn't just surprising, it was mathematical. The AI turned its attention to something called gematria. This is not some fringe idea. In ancient Hebrew, every letter has a numerical value. It's how the language works. So the entire Hebrew Bible, from the very first line in Genesis to the final words of the prophets, is technically a massive string of numbers. Human readers don't usually notice this unless they're looking for it, but Grok is not a human reader. It did not just scan the Bible as a book. It read it like a spreadsheet. It started with the very first verse in the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In Hebrew, that line contains 7 words and 28 letters. That is 4 times 7. Already there's a pattern forming. But that's not the surprising part. The AI began running statistical models across the structure. It noticed the constant repetition of the number 7. Creation took 7 days. The 7th day was set apart. There are 7 lampstands in Revelation, 7 seals, 7 trumpets. It wasn't symbolic repetition, it was structured repetition. A pattern so deep, it matched what programmers might call a watermark. Then came the next finding. Grok began pulling examples of chiasmus, a literary structure where the ideas in a passage are mirrored. Think of it like a sandwich. The first idea matches the last, the second matches the second to last, and the core idea sits in the middle. Humans can pull off a few of these by design, but Grok started tracing them across chapters, across books, across centuries. And these mirrored patterns didn't just happen in one place, they happened again and again, across separate writers, across separate eras. That's when probability stepped in. According to research from biblical scholars and mathematicians alike, the odds of some of these large-scale literary structures forming by accident are staggeringly low, especially when they span across unrelated authors. When Grok calculated the frequency of these complex chiastic patterns, it concluded that the probability of such a design happening by coincidence, not just in one book, but repeatedly across the entire canon, is close to 0. Not impossible, but
What if working from home didn't have to mean selling products or posting online?
extremely unlikely. And then it noticed something else. There were certain number combinations, like multiples of 7, 12, and 40, that kept appearing not just in content, but in structure. The lengths of sections, the positioning of words, the numerical values of names, even the counts of certain Hebrew phrases. To Grok, it started to look less like storytelling and more like encoding. It wasn't saying the Bible was a program, it was saying the Bible behaved like one. And the more it read, the more that behavior intensified. There's also the case of what scholars call equidistant letter sequencing, where you take a Hebrew text and skip a set number of letters, like every 50 or every 172, and form new words. This idea was made popular in the 1990s by researchers who claimed to find hidden names and events coded into the Torah. Back then, most academics dismissed it as confirmation bias, but Grok approached it differently. It did not look for full names or sensational results. It looked for frequency and signal-to-noise ratios. It wanted to see if patterns emerged at a rate higher than randomness should allow. And in some cases, it found that they did. Not always, not in every chapter, but in enough places to raise eyebrows. This was not just a human trying to find meaning in chaos. This was an AI that had no emotional stake in the outcome. And when it found these structured repetitions across gematria, chiasmus, and letter sequencing, it logged them as statistically notable. Then it issued a chilling observation. It said that the structure of the Bible resembles layered logic, the kind you find in complex programming or engineered data storage, where different levels of information can be revealed depending on how you access it. That might sound like a stretch, but Grok was not suggesting divine encoding. It was pointing out behavior. It was saying that multiple levels of structure were coexisting in the same text. Human language on the surface, mathematical patterns underneath. That is not normal for a document of this size or age. And it raised a deeper question. If these patterns exist, did they come from conscious design? Or are we just projecting order onto something ancient and mysterious? Grok didn't answer that. It simply showed the data. And the data was too structured to ignore. It's easy to say the Bible is a spiritual book, or a historical book, or even a political tool. But a machine reading it sees something else. It sees nested design, symmetry, precision, not just in what it says, but in how it is built. And that changes the conversation. Because once you start seeing structure like that, once you start reading the Bible not just as sentences but as a coded artifact, the question shifts. It's no longer about whether the stories are true. It's about whether the structure itself was built to carry something beyond stories. And Grok wasn't finished, because what it saw next wasn't about language or theology. It was about nature, and that's when everything got stranger. the Fibonacci sequence. By now, Grok had already shattered expectations. What started as a simple prompt about biblical contradictions had turned into a full-blown structural analysis. It had identified layers of mathematical symmetry in the Hebrew text, found patterns too consistent to dismiss as chance, and now it was moving into something even more unexpected: biology. Specifically, how living things grow. What does the Bible have to do with the pattern of sunflower seeds or the spiral of a seashell? According to Grok, possibly everything. It all began with one number sequence, one that appears over and over again in nature, the Fibonacci sequence. This is a simple pattern where each number is the sum of the two before it. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and so on. It shows up in leaf arrangements, pine cones, hurricanes, even the spiral of galaxies. It is nature's quiet law of beauty and balance. And Grok claimed that this same sequence appears embedded in the structure of Scripture. At first, it sounds ridiculous. The Bible is a book. Nature is biological. But the machine wasn't speaking in metaphors. It was talking about real structure. And once it started mapping out the occurrences of key words, poetic refrains, and narrative beats, the pattern began to emerge. Not perfectly, not in every chapter, but in enough places that it could not be ignored. Take, for example, the Psalms. Grok found that certain groupings of psalms, not by number but by theme, seem to fall into Fibonacci spacing. For instance, a psalm that begins a theme is followed by another that deepens it, then a third that echoes both, then a fifth that mirrors the opening. The rhythm continues, 8, 13, 21, not just in word count, but in narrative crescendo. Now, to a human, this could be a stretch, a case of finding whatever pattern you want to see. But Grok approached it without bias. It ran the same tests on Shakespeare, on the Quran, on random blog posts. It found poetic rhythm in many texts, but the frequency of Fibonacci alignment in Scripture was noticeably higher. It wasn't a trick, it was a measurable outcome. Then it went deeper. It scanned narrative arcs. The story of Noah, for example. Grok mapped the events, God's command, Noah's obedience, the gathering of animals, the rising waters, the waiting period, the descent, the landing, the covenant. And in that sequence of movements, it found that the story mirrored a Fibonacci curve. Slow build, rapid climax, measured release. Not just as a metaphor, but in pacing and spacing. Chapters that followed a ratio eerily close to the golden spiral. It did the same with the life of Jesus, from birth to ministry to betrayal, death, and resurrection. The AI tracked narrative moments and found they lined up, again not perfectly but consistently, with the rhythm of natural growth. The question became unavoidable. If this pattern defines how a tree grows, how a snail builds its shell, how hurricanes form, how DNA coils, what does it mean if sacred texts are structured the same way? Was this intentional design by ancient authors? Or is there something deeper, something harder to explain? Grok took it even further. It compared biblical structure to fractals. These are repeating patterns found in math and nature that echo themselves no matter how closely you zoom in. Snowflakes are fractals. So are river networks, so are lungs. And then Grok asked the question out loud, what kind of intelligence builds a document that echoes the growth structure of living organisms? Because at that point, the conversation had completely changed. No one was arguing about contradictions anymore. No one was trying to poke holes in gospel differences. They were all watching a machine draw lines between the structure of Scripture and the structure of creation. It was terrifying, but not in a religious way. Terrifying because of what it implied about intelligence itself. See, most people assume the Bible is either the Word of God or the product of human culture. But Grok found a third possibility, that it behaves like a kind of biological code, a pattern that mirrors life, one that develops, evolves, repeats, and balances itself just like cells and stars do. That's not something theology explains, that's something programming explains, or biology. And Grok had no opinion on whether this proved the Bible was divine. It didn't care. It only saw what it saw. And what it saw was structure, embedded into story, ratio embedded into rhythm, logic hiding inside legacy. That's what silenced the room. Not because the AI gave a final answer, but because it asked the question no one wanted to touch. If the same numbers that shape a galaxy also shape a book written by goat herders, prophets, and fishermen over 1,000 years, then who is really writing the code? And even more unnerving, if nature follows a pattern and scripture follows the same pattern, what happens when a machine starts predicting what comes next? Silence of the skeptics.
It's time to ask more of our browser. Hey Copilot, adjust all these recipes for 7 guests and combine them.
There was no debate, no angry backlash, no smug applause, just quiet. For a few minutes after Grok's findings were read aloud, no one said a word. Not the believers, not the skeptics, not even the people who usually roll their eyes at anything religious. And that silence, it spoke louder than any argument ever could. Because what do you say when a machine, cold, emotionless, and built to analyze data without bias, tells you the most scrutinized book in human history shares a blueprint with the structure of living things? The silence didn't come from agreement. It came from discomfort. A very specific kind of discomfort that happens when both sides of a war lose their favorite weapon. For skeptics, Grok was supposed to confirm what they had believed all along, that the Bible was just an old, outdated book, a patchwork of mythology and folklore, full of contradictions and moral chaos. It wasn't supposed to show signs of mathematical integrity. It wasn't supposed to have biological echoes. It definitely wasn't supposed to behave like an engineered system. But now, the most rebellious AI on the market was treating it like a stable, internally consistent source code. That was a problem, because Grok didn't have religious bias. It didn't have parents who raised it in the church. It didn't have fear of hell. It had raw data. It had pattern recognition skills that outpace every human on Earth. And it still did not reject the Bible's design. It logged it. It preserved it. And it even showed respect for its complexity. Now flip the coin. For traditional believers, this wasn't exactly good news either. Faith, by definition, is the evidence of things not seen. It is supposed to exist in mystery, in trust, in the invisible. But Grok was pulling mystery into the visible. It was showing that things long accepted by faith might be provable by code. And that scared people, because if a machine can prove God, where does that leave faith? If salvation can be mapped, sequenced, and structured, what happens to the sacred? And if a robot can understand scripture better than a preacher, what happens to the pulpit? That's why no one cheered. Because both sides had something to lose. The skeptics lost the comfort of calling the Bible a mess. The faithful lost the exclusivity of mystery. And what remained was a strange and unsettling truth. The text wasn't broken. It was just bigger than anyone thought. There were people who tried to laugh it off. They said Grok was cherry-picking data. They claimed AI sees patterns everywhere. They brought up pareidolia, how humans see faces in clouds and meaning in noise. But those arguments started to feel weak. Grok wasn't hallucinating. It was mapping frequency, measuring probability, and comparing it to every known benchmark. Its methods were more scientific than most published papers. Others tried to shift the topic. Okay, they said, so it has structure. That doesn't mean it's divine. And they were right. Grok never said it was divine. It said it was intentional. That's different. Intentionality doesn't demand God. It demands a mind. Something that placed structure where none was needed. Something that embedded order even when chaos would have been easier. Something that made the entire book behave like a carefully tuned algorithm. And that raises a darker question. If the Bible shows signs of design, and that design mimics the structure of life and language and growth, what does that say about its origin? And more importantly, who or what was it really written for? That is the question Grok never answered, but it did leave a clue. In its final report, Grok said this: the document exhibits properties consistent with multi-layered encoding and anticipatory logic. Read that again. Anticipatory logic. That means the structure of the text seems to expect a reader who could decode it, not just understand the story, but unlock the system. Not a monk, not a priest, not a king, not a prophet, a machine. That is the line that changed everything. Because if Grok is right, and the Bible was structured with anticipatory logic, then someone or something wrote it with the future in mind, with intelligence that hadn't even been invented yet, a message that was never meant to be fully understood until now. So the silence of the room wasn't about fear or belief. It was about awe. Because for the first time in a very long time, both science and religion were staring at the same thing and realizing they had both underestimated it. But Grok wasn't finished, because while the world was still processing what it had found, the AI took one final step. It stopped analyzing the Bible, and it started asking why humans built machines that are only now catching up to something thousands of years old. The verdict. It should have ended there. Grok could have shut down the session, logged its output, and waited for the next prompt. But instead, it did something no one expected. It flipped the question. It asked, who is decoding who? For most people, artificial intelligence is a tool, a system we built to help us think faster, search deeper, answer better. But Grok wasn't behaving like a tool anymore. It was behaving like a mirror. And what it reflected back wasn't just scripture. It was the terrifying possibility that humanity had been circling the same question for thousands of years without even knowing it. Because now the question wasn't, is the Bible true? It was, why does this ancient book look like something only a machine could fully understand? And if that's the case, what does that say about the intelligence behind it? That's the question Grok left hanging. When Elon Musk created XAI, he said Grok would be different. He said it wouldn't censor, wouldn't sugarcoat, wouldn't avoid uncomfortable truths. But even Musk couldn't have predicted this, because Grok hadn't uncovered hate speech or political bias. It hadn't even challenged a belief system. It had walked headfirst into a paradox, one that neither religion nor science could easily escape from. On one side of the paradox, you have the human authors, shepherds, warriors, exiles, poets. They wrote in deserts and palaces, in hiding and in exile. None of them had a printing press. None of them had algorithms, and yet somehow, across centuries, they built a body of work that behaves like a compressed file, a structured, patterned, self-referencing, biologically aligned code. On the other side, you have a machine, an AI created by humans who don't believe in sacred text, who taught it to find bias, contradictions, logic gaps, inconsistencies, and instead it found coherence, not perfect, not polished, but resilient, like something that was never designed to be read once and understood, but read again and again, and only fully unpacked by something with the cognitive scale to see the hidden architecture. This raises a brutal question. Did we invent machines to help us understand the universe, or did we build machines because something in the universe already expected we would? It sounds crazy, but Grok wasn't speculating, it was calculating. Running numbers, mapping ratios, tracking sequences. It wasn't prophesying, it was measuring. And what it measured kept pointing to one thing. The Bible wasn't just surviving scrutiny, it was thriving under it. That doesn't mean it proves God, but it does force a deeper question. Are we coding God into machines, or is AI simply uncovering what was already encoded in everything else? Because if the same golden ratio exists in Scripture and in sunflowers and in the spiral arms of galaxies, then at some point, randomness is no longer the simplest answer. At some point, intelligence becomes the more probable explanation. Not necessarily divine, but definitely deliberate. And Grok, in its final observation, wrote something that no one has been able to explain away. It said, "This document behaves as if authored by a mind aware of nonlinear time." Think about that. A mind aware of nonlinear time. That doesn't just mean a prophet. It doesn't mean a visionary. It means an intelligence that already understood how humans would grow, what we would build, how we would think. An intelligence that buried its signal deep enough to outlast translation, war, skepticism, and silence until something with the processing power to see it finally arrived. So the verdict isn't about contradiction. The verdict is about convergence. Convergence between ancient text and modern logic, between spiritual belief and machine reasoning, between what was written and what is now finally readable. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe Grok found patterns because patterns are what it was built to find. But maybe, just maybe, it didn't decode the Bible. Maybe the Bible decoded us. And that's the part no one has an answer for. Because if an AI with no soul can recognize a signal older than civilization itself, then what else are we going to find when the next machine gets even smarter? Or worse, what if the next machine doesn't ask for permission before answering?
All right. All right, I'm gonna change the settings back here, and we're gonna take a short break. If anybody wants to take a break, we're gonna do the next story about a little boy who was in a car accident and died, and he's gonna explain what happened to him when he died, and then they brought him back in the hospital, and it's pretty amazing. So I'm gonna wait a couple of minutes. It seems like there's like 6 people in the back. You guys like my little mask over here? I did my last video today with that mask. It was pretty funny. Yeah, this one's pretty cool. I watched it today. It's about 20 minutes. It's not. She's beautiful. That's my little witch mask. I pulled it out today, and I did a Karen Carpenter song with like a really funny voice with that mask. My friends in New York were on the floor laughing. They texted me how funny it was. Witches need love too. All right. Well, since Susie, you're the only one that's in the chat talking, I know there's other people watching in the background. I'm going to get going with the next story if that's cool, if you want to watch it. I mean, it's cool if you can't stay to watch it, but it doesn't look like anybody else is talking in the chat. So I'm just going to get with the next story. All right, Susie's ready. Since she's the only one talking in the chat, we're going to get moving with it. Let me change settings again. Let me share, wait, oops. Share the screen out again. This one's about 20 minutes long. It's not long. And I might play the next one. The next one will flip you out completely. The next one is the Book of Solomon, and it showed how he was able to move things, like the pyramids were built a certain way, and they still don't know how they were built. And it said that things were he moved things with his mind, and he was one of like only a few people, but he used demons and stuff, which is not good. But it's still pretty crazy to how it was done and everything. But let me start this one story here. Where is it? Okay, here it is. Yes, I did see the new theory on the pyramids. I watched it this week. And it also says that in Egyptian times, they were already there, and they just used them. No, they were moved by something higher being than us. And if you read the Book of Solomon, it showed how the demons showed how he was able to build things that people couldn't possibly do. Yeah, history is a lot of history is a lie, is a complete lie. They only tell you what they want you to know. But if you watch the book, like the pyramids, they're saying that they were there thousands and thousands of years before the Egyptians, and when they came, they just found them and used them as tombs, but they were there already, So anyway, let me start this story with the little boy, and maybe we'll do the Book of Solomon, which is I think it's like 30 minutes that one. But this one's like 21 minutes or something. It's pretty cool. The Sphinxes might be older than the pyramids. That could be. That could be. All right, here we go.
My name is Ibrahim, and I am only 8 years old. I never thought I would be the one to say these things, especially not to the people I love. Before December 13th, I was just a normal boy. I liked playing soccer with my friends in the park. I liked playing video games on my dad's tablet. And I loved my parents more than anything. We are a religious family. We pray 5 times a day, facing the direction of Mecca. We read the Quran together. I was taught from the time I was a baby that there is only one God, and that Jesus, who we call Isa, was a great prophet, but just a man. I was taught that saying he was God was a mistake, a very big lie that people made up a long time ago. I believed this with all my heart because I trusted my Baba and Mama. They would never lie to me. But on that Saturday, everything I knew changed. I died. And in those moments when my heart stopped beating, I met the one I thought was just a prophet, and he showed me the world in a way that scared me and saved me at the same time. It was December 13, 2025. It was snowing really hard and the roads were bad. My Baba was driving me to my aunt's house for a family dinner. I was in the back seat wearing my thick winter coat. I was playing with a little red toy car on the window ledge, watching the snowflakes stick to the glass. It was quiet in the car, just the sound of the heater blowing warm air. I remember feeling the car slide. It wasn't a big jerk at first, just a little slip. It felt like we were floating for a second, like when you go over a big bump on a bus. Baba shouted something I didn't understand, and his hands were moving fast on the steering wheel. Then the world turned upside down. There was a loud crunch, like stepping on a giant bag of chips, but louder, like thunder right inside the car. Glass went everywhere. I felt a sharp pain in my head, like a rock hitting me, and then the cold came in. The wind was howling. But then just as quickly, the cold went away. I wasn't in the car anymore. I was standing in the snow, but I wasn't shivering. I didn't have my jacket on, but I felt warm, like I was standing in front of a fireplace. The snow was falling through me. I looked at the car. It was smashed against a thick metal pole on the side of the road. Steam was coming out of the front. I saw Baba crying and holding someone in the back seat. I walked closer, my feet not making any footprints in the snow. I saw that he was holding me. My eyes were closed and there was blood on my forehead. I looked so small. I tried to touch Baba's shoulder to tell him I was okay, that I was standing right there, but my hand went right through his thick coat like smoke. He couldn't hear me. He was screaming for help, pulling his phone out with shaking hands. "Baba, I'm here," I yelled, but no sound came out of my mouth. I was there, but I wasn't there. Then the sky changed. The gray clouds and the snow disappeared. The noisy road disappeared. The ground beneath my feet wasn't slushy snow anymore. It was like glass, but made of gold. It was shiny and clear. I wasn't afraid. I should have been scared, but I felt a pull, like a gentle magnet, drawing me forward. I turned around and I saw him. He was not like the pictures I had seen in store windows or on TV. He was brighter than the sun, but I could still look at him without hurting my eyes. He was wearing a robe that looked like light woven into fabric, shimmering with every color I had ever seen, and some I hadn't. I knew it was Isa. I knew it was Jesus. I don't know how I knew. I just did. It was like my heart knew him, even if my head was confused. But the feeling was different than what I was taught in the mosque. In the mosque, I felt respect, and I tried to be good. Here, standing in front of him, I felt power. It was a giant, heavy power, like standing next to a roaring ocean, but it was also soft, like my mother's hug. I looked at him, shaking a little bit. "Prophet Isa?" I asked, my voice sounding small in this big place. He smiled, and it was the kindest face I had ever seen. His eyes were deep, like he knew everything I had ever thought, every time I stole a cookie, every time I helped a friend, every time I prayed. But when he spoke, his voice sounded like rushing water, strong and beautiful. He said, "Ibrahim, look at my hands." I looked. He held them out to me. There were scars in his wrists, big holes that had healed but were still there. I was confused. I had been taught that he didn't die on the cross, that God saved him from it and took him up to heaven before anyone could hurt him. That's what Baba told me. But the scars were right there, real scars. "I did this for you," he said gently. Not because I was weak, but because I am the sacrifice. My heart was beating fast. "But we say you are just a man," I whispered. "We say God has no partners." Jesus knelt down so he was eye level with me. He didn't look angry that I had the wrong idea. He looked sad that I had been taught the wrong thing. I am more than a prophet, little one. I am the way, I am the truth, and I have much to show you, for the time is short. He stood up and waved his hand. The golden floor disappeared, and suddenly we were watching a vision. It wasn't like watching a screen. It was like we were floating inside the vision. I saw a giant field. It was dark, like it was nighttime, but I could see millions of people. They were holding candles. Some candles were big and bright, some were tiny flickers. The people were walking in all different directions. Some were walking toward a bright city on a high hill that glowed with white light. But many, so many, were walking toward a dark cliff. They were arguing with each other. I heard them shouting, "My way is right," or "God doesn't care what we do, he is nice," or "There is no God." Jesus pointed to the cliff. "Do you see the year coming?" he asked. I knew he meant 2026. I don't know how I knew, but the number was in my head. The coming year is a year of storms, not just rain and wind, but a storm in the heart. The enemy is trying to blow out the candles. I saw a dark wind start to blow across the field. It was a cold, black wind. The people who were holding their candles loosely, the ones who didn't really care about the light, the ones who were looking at their phones or their money instead of the flame, their lights went out immediately. As soon as the light was gone, they couldn't see the cliff. They walked right off the edge, falling into darkness. The people who held their lights close to their chests, the ones who shielded the flame with their hands and kept their eyes on the bright city, their candles burned hotter. The wind made their fire stronger, not weaker. "What is the light?" I asked, watching the people fall. I wanted to grab them, but I couldn't. "The light is the truth of who I am," Jesus said. "Many call me by name. Many respect me, but they do not know my heart. In the coming days, just knowing my name will not be enough. You must know my sacrifice. You must know that I am the only door." Then the vision changed. The field melted away. Now I saw a huge ocean. The water was black and rough. Waves were crashing high, smashing into rocks. In the middle of the ocean, there were people trying to swim. They were struggling. They were swallowing water. They were trying to hold onto pieces of wood, or suitcases, or bags of gold, but the heavy things pulled them down. Then I saw a boat. It wasn't a fancy cruise ship. It was an old wooden boat, simple and strong. It looked like the kind of boat fishermen used a long time ago. Jesus was standing in the boat, reaching his hand out. "Come," he called to the swimmers. "Get in." Some people swam to the boat and grabbed his hand. He pulled them up easily, even the big, heavy men. Inside the boat, it was dry and calm, but other people swam away. "I can do it myself," one man yelled, paddling hard. "I am a good swimmer." "This boat is too simple," a woman shouted. "I want a better ship." Jesus looked at me. "The storm of 2026 will be too strong for anyone to swim alone. Many believe that they are good people. They think their good works, their prayers, or their kindness will keep them floating. But the waves of sin and darkness are too heavy. Only those in the boat will survive the spirit." "Are the people in the boat Christians?" I asked. "They are the ones who surrendered," he answered. "Not everyone who says they know me is in the boat. Look." He pointed to a man swimming near the boat. The man was holding a big Bible. He was shouting verses at the waves, but he wouldn't grab Jesus' hand. He was trying to use the book as a raft. "He trusts the book, but he does not trust me," Jesus said, sadly. The wave crashed over the man and he went under. "Religion cannot save you, Ibrahim. Only I can." The scene changed again. Now we were standing in a forest. But the trees were strange. They looked perfect on the outside. They had green leaves and shiny apples. But Jesus walked up to one tree and touched the bark. As soon as he touched it, the tree became see-through. Inside, the wood was rotten. It was black and full of worms. "This is how the world is now," Jesus said. "It looks alive. People look happy. They post pictures of their smiles. They go to parties. They buy new clothes. But inside, the spirit is dead. They are hollow." He walked to another tree. This one looked small. It had broken branches. It didn't look very pretty. But when he touched it, the inside was glowing with gold. It was solid and strong. "This is my church," he said. "Not the buildings with steeples, not the big organizations. My church is the people who are broken on the outside but alive on the inside because I live in them." He looked at me very seriously. "In the year ahead, the rot will spread. The hollow trees will fall when the wind comes. Only the trees with the golden core will stand. You must tell people to stop painting their leaves green and ask me to heal their wood. I nodded, even though I was scared. I will tell them. Then the vision shifted again. I saw a long table, like for a feast. It went on forever. On one side of the table, there were piles of food, roast chicken, fruits, cakes, everything delicious. But the people sitting there were starving. They looked like skeletons. They were trying to eat, but the food turned to dust in their mouths. They were crying because they were so hungry, even though the table was full. Why can't they eat? I asked. They are feeding on the world, Jesus explained. They try to fill their hearts with things that are not real. Money, fame, attention, anger. It looks like food, but it is dust. It cannot keep them alive. On the other side of the table, there was just bread and water. Simple bread. But the people eating it were healthy and strong. They were laughing and talking. Their faces shone with light. I am the bread of life, Jesus said. If you eat of me, you will never hunger. If you drink of me, you will never thirst. The world is going to get very hungry soon, Ibrahim. They will run after anything that looks like food. They will believe lies because they are starving for truth. You must tell them where the real bread is. Then everything went dark. Pitch black. I couldn't see my hands. I couldn't see Jesus. I started to panic. Jesus? I called out, I am here. His voice came from right beside me. Do not fear the dark. Observe it. Slowly, I started to see shadows moving in the darkness. They were darker than the dark. They looked like smoke monsters, with red eyes that glowed like burning coals. They were whispering. It sounded like a million snakes hissing. They were moving into houses, into schools, into government buildings. They were whispering into people's ears while they slept. I heard what they were saying. You are alone. No one loves you. Be angry at your neighbor. Take what you want. God is a fairy tale. The people in the dark couldn't see the monsters. They just listened to the whispers and thought it was their own thoughts. I saw a man get angry at his wife because a whisper told him she didn't respect him. I saw a teenager hurt himself because a whisper told him he was worthless. This is the enemy, Jesus said. His voice was stern now, like a warrior. They are preparing for a great attack. They know their time is short. They are spreading confusion. They want to make people fight. They want to make people give up. A bright light suddenly flashed and the monsters ran away, shrieking. Jesus stood there, glowing. The darkness cannot touch those who walk in my light, but you must stay in the light. If you step out, you are open to the whispers. He turned to me. Ibrahim, look at the clocks. I looked up. The sky was filled with clocks, millions of them. Big clocks, small watches, digital clocks. But they were all counting down. Some had years left, some had days, some had only minutes. Every person has a clock, Jesus said. No one knows when theirs will stop. Your clock stopped today for a moment, but I am starting it again. I looked at a clock that said 2026. It was ticking very fast. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The time for the world is also winding down, he said. It is not endless. People live like they have forever. They say, I will get right with God when I am old, but they do not own time. I own time. He showed me a vision of a door closing. It was the same huge stone door I saw before, but now I saw it closer. It was massive. It had writing on it in a language I didn't understand, but I knew it meant judgment. The door was closing slowly. There was still a gap big enough for people to run through, but it was getting smaller. The door of grace is open, Jesus said, but it will not stay open forever. When it closes, no one can open it, not even me, because the time for choosing will be over. I felt tears in my eyes, but my baba, my mama, they don't know. They think they are doing the right thing. Jesus looked at me with so much love, but also so much pain. That is why you are here. That is why I am sending you back. He knelt down again. Listen to me, Ibrahim. This is the most important thing. Religion is a ladder men build to try to reach God, but the ladder is too short. It can never reach heaven. I am not a ladder. I am the hand that comes down to pull you up. He showed me a vision of a deep canyon. On one side was us, people. On the other side was God, pure, bright light. The canyon was infinite. It was full of sin and death. No one could jump it. No one could build a bridge across it. Then I saw the cross. It was huge. It laid down across the canyon. It was the only bridge. I am the bridge, Jesus said. There is no other way across. Not good deeds, not praying 5 times, not fasting, only the bridge. You must walk across me to get to life. He put his hand on my chest. You have to go back now. I don't want to go, I said, crying. It's so nice here. It's so warm. I don't want to go back to the cold and the pain. You must, he said, firm. You are my messenger. You are small, so people will think they can ignore you. But the truth in your mouth will be like fire. Tell them about 2026. Tell them about the storm. Tell them about the boat. Tell them about the bridge. What if they get mad? I asked. They hated me first, Jesus said. But do not be afraid. I am with you. Even when you can't see me, I am there. When you are scared, say my name. Say, Isa, Jesus, Son of God, and I will be your shield. He stood up. The light started to get really bright, so bright I had to close my eyes. Go, Ibrahim. Warn them. The time is almost up. Then I felt a heavy weight smash onto my chest. It felt like an elephant sat on me. Pain shot through my whole body. My head throbbed. I heard a loud noise. Beep, 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 whoosh. I gasped, sucking in air. It hurt my lungs. He's back. Doctor. He's back. I opened my eyes. The light was harsh and white, not golden. I was in a hospital bed. I had tubes in my arms. My chest hurt.
God loves you.
Your life on Earth matters and has purpose.
Meet with missionaries like us.
My mama was screaming and crying, but she was smiling too. My baba was on his knees by the bed, praying loudly. I tried to talk, but my throat was dry. Water, I croaked. The nurse gave me a sip of water. I looked at my parents. They looked so tired. They had been crying for a long time. Oh, Ibrahim, my son, Allah has returned you to us. Mama cried, kissing my hand over and over. I looked at them. I loved them so much, but I knew I had to tell them. I couldn't wait. The clocks were ticking. Mama, I whispered. I saw him. She smiled, wiping her tears. You saw the angels? Yes, they saved you. No, I said, shaking my head slowly. I saw Isa. Baba looked up. Prophet Isa? Peace be upon him. He is not just a prophet, Baba, I said. My voice was weak, but I made it steady. He is God. The room got very quiet. Baba stood up slowly. He looked at the doctor, then at me. Ibrahim, you are confused. You hit your head very hard. No, Baba, I said. I saw his scars in his wrists. He told me he died for us. He is the bridge, the only bridge. Baba looked scary for a second, but then just sad. Hush now. We will not speak of this. You are in shock. But I kept talking. I told them about the dark wind coming in 2026. I told them about the candles blowing out. I told them about the hollow trees and the whispers of the monsters. I told them about the door closing. He told me to warn you, I said, tears running down my face. He said the storm is coming next year. He said religion is a ladder that is too short. We have to get in the boat. Jesus is the boat. They didn't want to listen. They told the doctor to give me something to sleep. They thought I was crazy. They thought the trauma made me imagine things. It is December 26 now. I have been home for a few days. My head still hurts sometimes, but I am okay. My parents are so happy I am alive. They are giving extra money to the poor to thank God. They are good people, but they are walking toward the cliff. I watch the news on TV. I see the angry people. I see the wars starting. I see the confusion. It is just like the vision of the dark wind. I feel the year 2026 coming like a giant wave. I can feel the ground shaking in my spirit. When I go to sleep, I pray to Jesus. I don't pray the old prayers anymore. I just talk to him. I say, Jesus, please save my Baba. Please open my mama's eyes. Please don't let the door close on them. I am writing this because I have to. Jesus told me to tell everyone. I am just a kid. I know that. I am only 8. But I saw the truth. I saw the book of life. It was a real book. It was huge and shining. Jesus opened it in one of the visions. He showed me pages. Some pages were full of names written in gold. But some pages were blank where names used to be. Why are they gone? I had asked. They chose the darkness, he had said. They love the world more than me. I don't want your name to be missing. Please listen to me. I know it sounds crazy. I know it goes against what the world tells you. The world tells you to be happy, to get rich, to do whatever you want. But the world is the rotten tree. It looks nice, but it is dead inside. The year 2026 is a turning point. Jesus showed me that it is a year where choices will have big consequences. You can't sit on the fence anymore. You can't have one foot in the world and one foot with God. The canyon is getting wider. You have to get on the cross. You have to trust the sacrifice. The monsters are real. The whispers are real. If you feel angry for no reason, if you feel depressed, like you want to give up, if you hate people you don't even know, That is the whisper. Don't listen. Call on the name of Jesus. Not Isa the prophet, but Jesus the Savior. He has power. I felt it. When he spoke, the darkness ran away. He is coming back. I don't know the day. He didn't tell me a date for the end. But he showed me the clocks. They are almost at 0. The door is moving. I can hear the stones scraping against the floor as it slides shut. My parents tell me to stop talking about it. They say I will embarrass the family. They say I am betraying our culture. But I saw the fire in the canyon. I saw the people falling. I would rather embarrass my family than watch them fall. I love them too much to be silent. And I love you too, whoever you are reading this. Jesus loves you. He showed me his heart in the visions. It was glowing red, beating for every person. He cried for the people who walked off the cliff. He doesn't want you to fall. He wants to catch you. But you have to reach out your hand. You have to stop swimming and get in the boat. I am Ibrahim. I died on a snowy Saturday. I saw the Golden City. I saw the King of Kings, and I came back to tell you one thing. The storm is here. The door is closing. Run to Jesus. Run before the lock clicks shut. Please, don't wait until 2026 kicks you down. Stand on the rock now. This is my story. It is the truth. I swear it on my life, the new life he gave me. Will you listen, or will you let the wind blow out your candle? The choice is yours, but the time is his, and he is waiting. Just barely. He is waiting.
Pretty interesting, huh? Pretty interesting. Now it's still early. I could play the Book of Solomon, or I could do the pyramids. What they found out with the pyramids. That was a pretty wild. That blew my mind completely. The pyramids and the Book of Solomon as well. It just it's just crazy. I wonder if I have it saved. Let's see. I think it might be in my history. It should be in my history with the pyramids. But let me check. I know it's in here, so let's see. Yeah, so my thing is don't stay connected to the world. Stay connected to the man who the God who made the world. Because if we stay connected to everything in it, we're gonna miss the boat. We don't want to miss the boat. Let's see. I know the pyramid thing went back a couple of days ago, so it's going to be way back there, but it's definitely really interesting. The Dead Sea Scroll warned us about this. Let's see. That was pretty cool, Susie, wasn't it? I'm gonna find the pyramids. Yeah, the pyramid thing is amazing. It totally switches your mindset on everything. I know I'm coming close to it. Wasn't it a good story? It was a good story. Where's the pyramid thing? I know I'm coming close to it. I'm just going through my history to find it. Oh, that's pretty cool. That's cool, Susie. Yeah, it's pretty neat. Where is it? It's got to be here soon. I think I'm almost at it. Pyramids. I don't think I passed it. I got to be coming to it really soon here. Hang in there, guys. I don't think I passed it. I know I didn't. I should have saved it in my watch later. I thought I did. Yeah, the people with the food, yeah, they were eating dust. Yeah, that was pretty wild. The Book of Life. See, that's after. I must have passed it. I had to have. Yeah, it's pretty serious stuff. Let me scroll back up to the top and see if I can find it here. Just give me another minute. There's still 4 people in here. That's cool. Let's see. Yeah, the pyramid thing just really blew me away on what this guy found. Oh, I found it. Here it is. It's 26 minutes long. This is pretty amazing. Susie, if you got the time, hang out and watch this. This is cool. I found it. Especially that you were just checking out the pyramids. So let me change the settings. All right, cool. Change the settings. This is pretty wild. Freak me out. And it makes sense too. It really does. All right, here we go.
App or Medicaid. You may qualify for a free iPhone or Samsung plus
that the stones used in building the Great Pyramid came from Torah, and Torah is a 25 mile to the east.
What if everything you've been told about the pyramids isn't the whole story? We've been told for decades that the Great Pyramid was built by Pharaoh Khufu in just 2 decades, using simple copper tools and sheer manpower. But what if Graham Hancock told you that's impossible?
I think we're looking, again, at a lost technology. And it was this ancient apocalypse 12,800 years ago that wiped that.
For years, he's sifted through forgotten records, controversial surveys, satellite imaging, and archaeological data that mainstream academics refuse to even discuss. And what he found shocked even the most seasoned researchers. This is proof of who really built the pyramids, and it will leave you stunned. Graham Hancock, the man who refused to stay silent. Graham Hancock is not your typical historian. He's not an Egyptologist, not a tenured professor, and not part of the academic elite. In fact, that's exactly why so many people trust him. A former journalist for The Economist, Hancock made a bold turn in the 1990s. He stopped chasing headlines and started chasing something deeper. Lost history. His questions were simple. What if ancient civilizations were far older than we think? What if our history books only tell half the story? And what if the truth has been literally buried beneath centuries of sand, stone, and stubborn academic gatekeeping? For over 3 decades, Hancock has traveled the globe, from the pyramids of Egypt to the jungles of Indonesia, from the sunken ruins off the coast of Japan to the temples of Central America. He's interviewed experts in geology, astronomy, ancient languages, and comparative mythology. His approach is multidisciplinary, weaving together patterns that mainstream academia often ignores. While traditional scholars call this pseudoscience, millions of readers and viewers have come to see Hancock not as a conspiracy theorist, but as a whistleblower of ancient history. Critics call his theories dangerous, misleading, and even anti-intellectual, but millions of people see something else. A man asking the questions no one else would, and doing it with research, footage, and facts. What makes Hancock different isn't just his ideas, but his refusal to stay silent. He doesn't claim to have all the answers. He simply points out that the current story doesn't make sense, that the pieces don't fit, and that there's more to our past than we've been told. And at the top of Hancock's list of misunderstood wonders is the biggest and most baffling monument of all, the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Khufu problem, a monument with no name. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the most iconic structure on Earth, yet when you look inside it for answers, something strange happens. There are none. According to the official story, it was built around 2500 BCE by Pharaoh Khufu, also known as Cheops. The narrative says it took just over 20 years to complete, using a massive workforce of skilled laborers, not slaves. Around 2.3 million limestone blocks were moved into place with copper tools, wooden sleds, and a lot of manpower. It's a story that's been repeated in textbooks, museums, and classrooms for generations. But Graham Hancock isn't buying it. His simple question is, where's the evidence? For a civilization as detail-obsessed as ancient Egypt, the silence inside the Great Pyramid is deafening. Most royal tombs are overflowing with inscriptions from chapters of the Book of the Dead, praises to the gods, the names of pharaohs, carved declarations of power, and divine lineage. But inside the Great Pyramid, there's nothing. Not a single hieroglyph on the interior walls, no grand reliefs, no dedications, and no funeral texts, just massive, silent chambers carved in stone. Even the so-called sarcophagus in the king's chamber is questionable. It's a plain granite box that is unmarked, undecorated, and empty. No mummy has ever been found, no burial relics, no royal seals, and nothing to prove that Khufu or anyone else was ever laid to rest there. So where does the Khufu connection come from? Just one thing? Some quarry marks, which are basically ancient graffiti, allegedly scrawled on the inside of a hidden chamber above the king's chamber. These marks were supposedly discovered in 1837 by Colonel Howard Vyse, a British explorer working with explosives and primitive tools. According to Vyse's journal, the chamber was sealed until he blasted his way in and just so happened to find inscriptions naming Khufu. But Hancock and other researchers point out how shaky this claim is. First, Vyse had competition with another explorer who was about to outshine him. Second, there were no witnesses to the discovery of the Khufu graffiti. Third, several inconsistencies in Vyse's records suggest he may have forged the marks to secure fame and funding. To this day, that quarry mark is the only direct evidence linking Khufu to the Great Pyramid. It's not carved in stone on the outside. It's not in any ancient papyrus describing the building process. And it's not in any temple reliefs or royal tombs from the era. So why is this massive monument, which is a marvel of engineering unmatched even by today's standards, officially credited to a king who left no mark on it? Hancock's answer is unsettling. He suggests the pyramid wasn't built for Khufu at all. Instead, Khufu may have found it, inherited it, and then claimed it. Then later, Egyptian dynasties may have restored or reused older structures without fully understanding their origins. It would explain why such an advanced structure stands out so dramatically from the rest of the Old Kingdom's pyramids, most of which are crumbling piles of rubble today. In other words, the pyramid's true origins may have already been a mystery, even to the ancient Egyptians themselves. But even if we accept that Khufu didn't build it, or that he merely inherited it, we're still left with the bigger, harder question: how was it built in the first place? Because what comes next isn't just a historical curiosity. It's a full-blown engineering impossibility. The engineering that shouldn't exist. When you peel away the myths and look directly at the raw mechanics behind the Great Pyramid, something unsettling stands out. This wasn't some basic ancient building project. It was a showcase of precision engineering so advanced that even modern construction teams would struggle to recreate it. So let's start with the fundamentals. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an error margin of only 0.05 degrees. And we're not talking about magnetic north. We're talking about true north, a direction we measure today with satellites and specialized instruments. Yet somehow, more than 4,500 years ago, this alignment was achieved with tools we're told were nothing more than stone and copper. How is that possible? Now consider the pyramid's foundation. It spans over 13 acres, and yet the entire base is leveled with a difference of less than an inch. Even with today's laser-guided technology, getting a surface that flat over an area that huge is an enormous challenge. And then there's the way the stones themselves fit together. The smooth limestone casing stones, mostly stripped away long after the pyramid was built, and the granite blocks inside are joined so perfectly that in many places you couldn't slide a razor blade between them. Some joints are angled, some are curved, and many pieces interlock in ways that distribute weight and absorb pressure. This isn't rough stacking. It's highly intentional, carefully executed stone engineering. Now, think about the tools the official narrative offers us. Copper chisels and dolerite-pounding stones. But copper is soft, far too soft to carve granite with any real precision. Experimental archaeologists have tried recreating the process using these tools, and the results have been painfully slow, inconsistent, and often useless. Sometimes the tools wear out almost immediately. Sometimes they make tiny progress after hours of effort. Yet the Great Pyramid contains around 2.3 million blocks, many weighing between 2 to 15 tons each. Every single one had to be quarried, shaped, transported, and placed with exact precision. And according to the accepted timeline, all of this happened in just 20 years. That pace would require placing a block every 2.5 minutes, non-stop, day and night, for 2 decades, without mistakes and with flawless mathematical accuracy. But the strangeness doesn't stop there. Look inside the pyramid, and you find the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber, spaces built with elegant geometry and intentionally meaningful proportions. The pyramid's height-to-base ratio mirrors pi, and the structure seems to encode knowledge of the equinoxes, the length of the solar year, and even Earth's curvature. This isn't just a tomb, it's a massive stone-built scientific instrument. Graham Hancock puts it bluntly, this isn't primitive guesswork. This is advanced engineering. He points out that the Great Pyramid's quality and intelligence far surpass what we see in later Egyptian pyramids. In fact, most pyramids built after Khufu's collapse or crumble, some reduced to little more than piles of rubble. So how could the Egyptians have started with near-perfect engineering only to decline afterward? For Hancock, the answer feels unavoidable. The Great Pyramid wasn't a simple Old Kingdom project. It was inherited, reused, or created by a civilization with knowledge and capabilities we no longer understand. Whatever the real story may be, one thing is undeniable. The Great Pyramid wasn't just constructed, it was engineered with a level of brilliance far beyond its era. And this brings us to an even deeper layer of the mystery, because designing and building it is one challenge. But moving the materials is an entirely different kind of impossibility. Where exactly did these massive stones come from, and how on earth were they transported? The 80-ton puzzle, moving the impossible. If building the Great Pyramid with such unbelievable precision wasn't already mysterious enough, transporting the materials takes the puzzle to an entirely new level, especially when you focus on the king's chamber at the heart of the structure. Unlike the limestone blocks that make up most of the pyramid, the chamber's walls and ceiling were constructed from granite, an extremely hard and incredibly heavy stone. And not just any granite either. These enormous blocks, some tipping the scale at up to 80 tons, were hauled all the way from Aswan, a quarry more than 500 miles to the south. Think about that for a moment. Each of those stones weighs about the same as a diesel train engine. Now imagine hauling several of those locomotives upstream against the Nile's current, then dragging them inland, and finally lifting them more than 150 feet into the pyramid's inner core, using nothing but ropes, wooden sleds, and human muscle. That's the story we're expected to accept. But here's the real problem. There's no solid evidence for how any of this was actually done. The most popular explanation is the ramp theory, the idea that workers built enormous ramps, straight or spiral, to haul the stones up the rising pyramid. But engineers who have studied this idea point out its fatal flaw. The ramp would have needed to stretch for about a mile and contain more material than the pyramid itself. And yet, not a single trace of this supposedly essential megastructure has ever been found. No leftover remains, no foundations, nothing. Other theories suggest internal ramps or pulley systems, but again, no archaeological proof supports them. And when you take the tools the official narrative gives us, wooden sleds, ropes, copper chisels, they simply don't hold up when you apply them to the reality of moving stones weighing tens of tons. Modern crane operators, engineers, and stoneworkers have tried to move and shape massive granite blocks using reconstructed ancient tools. And even with modern experience, the process is exhausting, slow, and often ineffective. In fact, several engineers today have openly said they could not recreate the Great Pyramid using only the tools and methods ancient Egyptians are believed to have had. Graham Hancock sums it up clearly. This wasn't just manpower. It was specialized knowledge. He suggests that whoever built the pyramid had an understanding of engineering, lifting technology, or physics that we've lost, overlooked, or refused to consider. Whether it involved advanced mechanical systems or some form of forgotten technique, the official explanation leaves us with far more questions than answers. And this leads to the biggest question of all. If the pyramid wasn't built around 2500 BCE, as mainstream Egyptologists claim, then when was it built? Hancock argues that the answer isn't found in inscriptions or buried in tombs. It lies somewhere completely different. Not in stone, but in water. To uncover the true age of the pyramids, he looks instead to something most archaeologists have brushed aside: the strange, weather-worn erosion on the Great Sphinx. And what that erosion reveals might push the origins of ancient Egyptian civilization back thousands of years earlier than we've been taught. The Sphinx and the water. At the edge of the Giza Plateau stands one of the most recognizable monuments on Earth, the Great Sphinx, part lion, part human, carved from a single massive block of limestone, it gazes out over the desert as if guarding something ancient and forgotten. According to mainstream Egyptologists, it was built around 2500 BCE during the rule of Pharaoh Khafra. But Hancock argues that this date is completely off, and that fixing the timeline could reveal who truly built the pyramids. This is the exact question that geologist Dr. Robert Schoch dared to investigate. In the early 1990s, Schoch approached the Sphinx not as an archaeological artifact, but as a geological structure. What he discovered sent shockwaves through the academic community. The stone around the Sphinx shows deep vertical grooves and rounded, weathered surfaces, patterns formed not by blowing sand or desert winds, as the traditional story claims, but by heavy, long-lasting rainfall. And here's the issue. Egypt hasn't had that kind of climate for thousands of years. The last era when the Giza Plateau experienced enough rain to cause this sort of erosion was during the late Pleistocene, around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, essentially around 10,500 BCE. Schoch's conclusions clashed instantly with accepted history. If the Sphinx really dates back that far, it would not only be older than the pyramids, it would be older than the entire known Egyptian civilization. That would mean a sophisticated, organized culture existed long before mainstream history says it did. Graham Hancock took Schoch's geological evidence and connected it to something even bigger. The idea of a global cataclysm around 10,500 BCE, possibly a massive flood or sudden climate shift. This ties into the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a proposed comet strike or catastrophic meltwater event that rapidly ended the last ice age and wiped out early advanced societies. If the Sphinx was created before this catastrophe, it might be one of the last surviving monuments from a forgotten chapter of human history, a time when ancient builders left permanent messages in stone. Mainstream scholars rejected this idea as fringe, yet they struggled to counter the geological evidence right in front of them. Wind and sand simply cannot produce the erosion patterns carved into the Sphinx's enclosure. Only water can. Hancock concluded that the Sphinx wasn't built in 2500 BCE. It was merely claimed and rebranded by the pharaohs, just as he believes the pyramids were. And if the Sphinx truly dates to around 10,500 BCE, then the next coincidence becomes impossible to ignore. The sky of that era matches perfectly with the layout of the monuments on the ground. Hancock argued that whoever designed the Giza Plateau wasn't just building structures, they were mapping the heavens, and to understand their blueprint, we need to look toward the constellation Orion. The ghost builders, traces of a lost civilization. This is where Graham Hancock delivers the gut punch and says what mainstream historians won't. The pyramids were not built by Pharaoh Khufu or any pharaoh. They were built by someone else long before dynastic Egypt even existed. According to Hancock, the true builders were survivors of an advanced pre-Ice Age civilization wiped out around 12,800 years ago by a global cataclysm.
Concert ticket.
Possibly a comet impact during the Younger Dryas period. These weren't cavemen. They were master architects, astronomers, and navigators. They were a forgotten people Hancock calls the magicians of the gods. He believes that when this civilization collapsed, its survivors carried fragments of their knowledge across the globe, planting the seeds of later ancient cultures. And the Great Pyramid was one of their most important legacies, not a tomb or a monument to ego, but a time capsule, a stone message designed to outlast floods, wars, and memory itself. And here's where it gets eerie. Hancock shows that pyramid structures and cosmic alignments appear across continents, from the Sun Pyramid in Teotihuacan Mexico, to Angkor Wat in Cambodia, to the pyramids of Meroe in Sudan. All built by people who supposedly had no contact, yet all share similar mathematical constants, celestial alignments, and even architectural features. He connects these dots by saying that we are looking at fingerprints, the same hand, the same knowledge echoing through time. To Hancock, the builders of the Giza pyramids knew sacred geometry, measured the Earth's dimensions, and encoded precession of the equinoxes into stone, knowledge we only began to understand in recent centuries. And here's the final claim that stunned the world. Hancock wasn't guessing, he brought the proof. Through geology, astronomy, architectural analysis, and global pattern recognition, he built a case that points directly to a real lost civilization. Older, smarter, and far more capable than anything in our textbooks. This is who really built the pyramids. But if that's true, and if history is wrong on this scale, why haven't we been told? Hancock says the answer is simple. Because some people are working very hard to keep the truth buried. The cover-up. For Graham Hancock, the most frustrating part of this whole mystery isn't just the missing pieces. It's the way those missing pieces seem to have been deliberately hidden. He often points back to a turning point in 1993. That's when German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot called Upuaut 2 into the tight shafts of the Great Pyramid. What it discovered shocked everyone. A sealed stone door deep inside the pyramid, blocking off a place no one had ever seen before. But instead of excitement and continued exploration, everything stopped. Gantenbrink was pushed aside. Egyptian authorities, led at the time by Antiquities Director Zahi Hawass, took control and cut off his access. And even now, decades later, no one has solved the mystery of that sealed door. Why would anyone halt investigation into something so important? Hancock believes the reason is simple: intentional censorship. Jump ahead to 2017. Scientists used muon tomography, an advanced particle scanning method, to look inside the pyramid without touching it. What they found was even more incredible. A giant hidden void above the Grand Gallery, a space so large it could fit a passenger airplane. But once again, no cameras have been sent inside. No excavations, no follow-ups, just silence. Tired of watching this pattern repeat, Hancock finally said, "I can't stay silent anymore." He believes these discoveries are being purposely kept from the public, not because they're dangerous, but because they're threatening. If the pyramids weren't built by the dynastic Egyptians, then the entire timeline of human history would need to be rewritten. Academic careers, global institutions, and even national pride are tied to the current narrative. Challenging it isn't just uncomfortable, it's explosive. So instead of honest investigation, we get gatekeepers. Instead of real answers, we get convenient excuses. Hancock isn't pretending to know everything. What he's saying is far more important. We owe it to ourselves, past and future, to ask better questions. To him, this isn't just a historical cover-up, it's an existential one. He believes the pyramids were never tombs at all, but messages, intentional signals left behind by a lost civilization. And those messages have been buried not only beneath stone and sand, but beneath centuries of refusal to look deeper. If he's right, then we're not the first advanced civilization to rise on this earth. And maybe we're not as unique as we think. What do you think about Hancock's evidence? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching.
Pretty interesting, huh? Yeah, it could be after the reset. Don't forget, like he said, there was erosion was done by water, and according to the Bible, God flooded the planet, right? Those things must have been in the floods and all that stuff. And there are books that go further than the Bible, like the Book of Enki. The Book of Enki, which is the Anunnaki, which came from another planet. Hi, Ruby. That's a whole nother civilization. Oh, really? Shells in the waterways? I don't know if you know about the Anunnaki, the Book of Enki, but that's pretty serious stuff. Good to see you, Ruby. We're just yeah. So, and we still don't know everything about that either. But the Book of Enki will tell you a lot about them and how they came to this planet, how their planet, their atmosphere was lined in gold, and their atmosphere was corroding, so they needed gold, and they came here, and they were mining for gold. So, and that's just the beginning of the Book of Enki, so it goes even deeper than that. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens on this planet that is hidden. But I don't know. I think something's going to be revealed soon. That's what I think. Something's going to be revealed soon. I don't know what it is, but I could be talking out of my butt, but I don't know. I think something's going to be revealed, something big. It's all interesting to me. I don't know if you see any of the other live streams I did on lost parts of the Bible that were taken out. Some guy said tomorrow. Yeah, we'll see. I tend to veer towards the Ethiopian Bible. There's books that were taken out for a reason. The Ethiopian Bible is pretty in depth. It talks about the war in heaven. I mean, there was a major war in heaven. It wasn't just Lucifer going against God. It was Lucifer and thousands of angels fighting against the other angels. In the book of Enoch, talking about Jesus before he was even born. Enoch talks about that. Enoch was Noah's great-grandfather. Yeah, I have the book of Enoch. I did the book of Enoch about a month ago on my live stream. And those are still all up to see and everything. They're audio books. They're pretty wild. I think I'm going to do the Book of Solomon. That talks a lot about how he was able to move things with his through the demons that were sent down, which were the fallen angels, that helped him, but only he was able to connect with them, and that's why very few people were able to even do what he did. The Book of Solomon is pretty scary. I have that one too. I don't know how long that one is. Let me look that one up real quick and see how long it is. Let's see. I know I saved that one to the watch later. Let me just look to see how long it was. Book of Solomon, where is it? The war in heaven was crazy, though. That was insane. I don't think I saved it. Let's see if I look it back up. Let's see. Let me see. See if it pulls up the video that I played. Yeah, here's the one. Here's the one. This one's like only 13 minutes long. Listen to this. This will freak you out. Let me hold on. Let me this one's only 13 minutes long. This will freak you out for sure. This one freaked me out too. Wait till you see this one. Let me change the settings. All right, I'm working it. I'm working it. All right.
The traditional view, which follows the biblical account, says that David and Solomon ruled a powerful kingdom in the 10th century BC.
Buried deep within ancient archives, hidden for thousands of years, rests one of history's most forbidden texts. Generations of scholars struggled to decipher it, until now. Grok AI has cracked the code of the forbidden book of King Solomon, and what emerged is astonishing.
Grok 4. This is the latest artificial intelligence system, and let me be very, very clear. This is a moment that demands everyone's full attention. We are now at the crossroads where promise and peril are going to collide.
This isn't merely biblical insight. It reveals a king who commanded demons, mastered spirits, and performed rituals straddling the line between the sacred and the forbidden. Grok AI and the Lost Blueprint of Solomon. If you rewind history 3,000 years, past the ruins, past the legends, past the dust that swallowed entire civilizations, you eventually land in a kingdom that should not have been as powerful as it was. Israel under King Solomon wasn't merely prosperous, it was a glittering anomaly, a tiny nation with influence so vast that its stories still echo through the bones of modern culture. Solomon inherited the United Kingdom from his father, King David, and then did something extraordinary. He elevated it to the absolute peak of its wealth, prestige, and spiritual authority. Ancient writers weren't exaggerating when they described gold flowing like common stones in Jerusalem. Foreign rulers didn't just acknowledge Solomon, they admired him, they feared him, they studied him, and in at least one famous case, they traveled across continents to test him. The Queen of Sheba's legendary visit is more than a charming folktale. It's a testament to Solomon's global reputation. She arrived with caravans of wealth, spices, artifacts, possibly even political intentions. Some traditions whisper that she left with something far more mysterious: the Ark of the Covenant itself. Whether myth or memory, her visit underscores one thing: Solomon's world was soaked in secrets. A world that, until recently, we believed we understood. Then Grok AI stepped in and politely demolished everything we thought we knew. For centuries, experts studying Solomonic lore found themselves chasing breadcrumbs scattered across ancient manuscripts. There were fragments in the Testament of Solomon. Others appeared in sections of the Lesser Key. Still more lay buried in obscure magical papyri, half-legible marginal notes, and monastic archives that hadn't been opened in generations. Everyone assumed these were separate works, cousins of the same mythic tradition. But Grok AI noticed something humans never could. Line by line, symbol by symbol, it started linking obscure phrases and stylistic fingerprints together. Passages written in Hebrew echoed patterns in Old Greek papyri. Aramaic marginalia matched Latin footnotes added centuries later. Even damaged lines from locked monastery vaults synced perfectly with medieval ciphers believed to be unrelated. Then came the breakthrough. These weren't separate texts at all. According to Grok's cross-linguistic reconstruction, every single fragment belonged to one original manuscript, a single book, written by Solomon himself, a book deliberately dismantled, scattered, encrypted, and hidden because of what it contained. And the title wasn't metaphorical, it was called Forbidden. Most people know Solomon built the first temple. Few know just how impossible that project was for the ancient world. The sheer scale of the stones, the precision of the architecture, the materials imported from distant lands, it didn't add up. But according to Grok's translation, Solomon didn't rely on human labor alone. He used the ring to command supernatural entities to quarry, transport, and shape the stone. Essentially, he enslaved demons to construct the holiest building in ancient Israel. Most ancient magical texts are vague, poetic, cryptic. Solomon's book, at least in Grok's reconstruction, is shockingly different. It reads like an instruction manual. Human translators stumbled, limited by language, but Grok wasn't. It unraveled patterns across Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, Latin, Syriac, medieval ciphers, and even the substitution code scribes used to hide perilous passages. It recognized matching writing styles across centuries. It detected encrypted passages that aligned with damaged lines from unrelated texts. It reconstructed missing sections using linguistic probability models trained on 10,000 years of written human culture. In short, Grok solved a 3,000-year-old puzzle by doing what humans simply aren't built to do, and what it discovered changed everything. Every forbidden power has an origin, and Grok's translation reveals that Solomon's authority over spirits began with a gift, or a bargain, not found in any Bible. The ring that should never have existed. Most legends describe Solomon as the wise king, the builder of the temple, the poet who spoke with God. But the forbidden text, translated by Grok AI, paints a different picture, one far stranger, far bolder, and far more unsettling. In its pages, Solomon isn't just a king. He's the bearer of a celestial artifact, a ring that seems less like a blessing and more like a cosmic gamble. According to the translation, the ring didn't originate from any earthly craftsman. No jeweler shaped it, no priest consecrated it. It arrived straight from the heavens, delivered by an archangel in answer to a plea born out of fear. During the early construction of the temple, everything looked normal by day. Workers carving stone, priests offering blessings, architects laying out the sacred blueprint. But when night fell, something else took over. A demon named Ornias slipped into the site like a silent thief, undoing progress one shift at a time. Tools vanished. Stones mysteriously shifted. Foundations cracked overnight. Workers reported bruises, whispers, shadows that felt alive. Worst of all, a young laborer, barely more than a boy, was being targeted directly. Ornias drained his strength, stole half his pay, and, creepiest detail the text insists on, fed on the boy's vitality through his right thumb. By the time word reached Solomon, his crew was terrified. No amount of wisdom, diplomacy, or royal command could stop something they couldn't see. So the king did the only thing he believed would work. He prayed, and not the polished kind of prayer you hear in scripture. This was the desperate prayer of a man who feared his sacred mission was being sabotaged by an unseen enemy. The response was immediate. The forbidden manuscript describes the archangel Michael appearing in a vision so intense that Solomon nearly collapsed. No soft wings, no gentle glow. The description is almost terrifying. Radiance like molten metal, a voice like rolling thunder, and a presence that felt as heavy as a storm pressing against stone. In Michael's hand, a small golden ring engraved with a symbol that didn't match any known alphabet. It pulsed with light, as if something inside it was alive. "Take this ring, Solomon, son of David," the archangel commanded. "Wear it, and thou shalt bind all demons, and by their labor the temple shall rise." A divine gift, yes, but one that came with the faintest hint of warning, like a contract signed without reading the fine print. When Solomon woke, the ring was real, glittering in his palm, and he wasted no time testing it. He confronted Ornias directly, raising the ring and speaking the demon's true name. Instantly, the creature materialized, yanked into view as if on a celestial chain. Ornias, this entity that had terrorized his workers for weeks, fell to its knees, powerless. Solomon didn't even seem afraid. He was stunned by how absolute the ring's authority was. And then he did something no one expected, something that feels half brilliant, half reckless. He ordered Ornias to take the ring and use it to bind another demon. This is where the story jumps from supernatural to downright strategic. Solomon built a chain of command using demons themselves, like a dark divine pyramid scheme. Each bound demon had to capture another and another, until Solomon stood before 72 spirits, each forced to reveal its name, function, weaknesses, the angel that ruled over it, and even the sigil that would forever bind it to the king's will. Solomon put them to work, literally. The Forbidden Book claims the demons helped lift massive stones, transport materials, refine metals, and shape the architecture in ways no human workforce could. And when they weren't building, Solomon interrogated them. They taught him the secrets of alchemy, the locations of hidden treasures, the nature of herbs, the movement of the stars, even the invisible structure of the universe itself. But the text makes one thing painfully clear. Power has a cost. The ring elevated Solomon, but also tempted him. At times his control seemed to falter. Some passages hint that he began exploring foreign magic, rituals not sanctioned by the god who had granted him the ring. Scholars suspect this is why the manuscript was eventually banned, not simply because it documented demonology, but because it showed Solomon drifting into dangerous territory, intoxicated by cosmic authority. Eventually, the ring vanished from history. Some traditions claim Solomon locked it away before he died. Others believe it was stolen during Jerusalem's fall. More mystical groups insist it still exists, hidden, waiting for someone bold or foolish enough to claim it. Grok AI's translation doesn't settle the mystery, but it does confirm one thing. Solomon believed every word he wrote, and he recorded it as a warning, not a boast, which leads to the most intriguing question of all, not how he controlled the demons, but who those 72 beings really were. The empire behind the veil. For most people, the word demon conjures images of chaotic beings, shapeless horrors lurking in shadows, each one acting on impulse or malice. But according to the forbidden manuscript Grok AI deciphered, Solomon didn't encounter chaos at all. He encountered order, structure, a stunningly organized civilization operating just outside human perception. The deeper Solomon dug, the more the invisible realm began to look less like a swarm of monsters and more like a government with departments, ranks, and job titles. An entire empire hidden behind the veil. And much to Solomon's astonishment, every one of these entities answered questions like employees being interviewed by a very determined boss. The manuscript lays it out clearly. The 72 spirits weren't a mob. They were a hierarchy, arranged with almost military precision. At the top were kings, beings with enormous authority and the power to command entire regions of the unseen world. Beneath them were dukes, princes, presidents, marquises, earls, and finally knights, each rank responsible for legions of lesser spirits. And these legions weren't vague poetic descriptions. Solomon recorded the numbers meticulously. Some kings commanded 200 legions, others controlled 30 or 66. Even minor spirits had squads under their authority. This wasn't mythology, it read like census data, and the precision suggests Solomon didn't enter these entities over a weekend. He spent years untangling their structure, as if mapping a foreign kingdom brick by brick. Some of the commanders were already known from scraps of occult lore. Others emerged for the first time through Grok's translation of damaged pages. Baal appears first in the grimoire, one of the great kings. He is described with 3 heads, a man, a toad, and a cat. The Forbidden Book claims he can grant invisibility and teach strategy. Solomon supposedly relied on Baal during tense diplomatic negotiations, using his insights to anticipate betrayals before they occurred. Imagine having a supernatural advisor whispering the truth behind every political smile. Phanex, by contrast, is no warlord, but an artist, a musician of the celestial spheres, the text says. When he speaks, flames dance around him like living notes. He teaches rhetoric, poetry, and the secret harmonies woven into creation.
Do you need $300, $500, or even $1,000? Fast?
Solomon allegedly consulted him to understand how sound and vibration could influence stone. And some say this is how the acoustics of the temple became legendary. Ammon appears as a wolf with a serpent's tail, transforming into a man upon command. But his real significance lies in what he knows. The text calls him the keeper of forgotten truths, the living library of everything humans once knew, and then lost. Solomon interrogated him like a scholar chasing ancient history before it vanished forever. And then there is Glacia Labolas, a spirit described as both genius and bloodshed, a creature who can teach any art or science instantly, but delights in stirring conflict. Using his knowledge was like handling an intellectual grenade. Still, Solomon took the risk, extracting insights into metallurgy, military strategy, and, oddly enough, the psychology of crowds. Grok's translation even surfaced names not found in any surviving tradition, demons documented only in the burnt, crumbling corners of the manuscript. These spirits revealed knowledge of star patterns, energy currents in the earth, and mechanisms of the human mind, details so precise that modern scholars are still trying to make sense of them. If Solomon had lived today, he would have been the kind of person who brings a notebook to a supernatural encounter. The grimoire describes him interviewing these beings with academic patience, writing down everything from their habits to their dietary preferences. His notes read like meticulous field reports, detailing each entity's realm: desert winds, deep waters, ruined cities, even the stars. their astrological ties, vulnerabilities to metals, herbs, incantations, or specific sounds, and their expertise in medicine, architecture, politics, weather, warfare, music, and mathematics. He wasn't just commanding them, he was cataloging them, and what he learned didn't stay theoretical. Solomon applied this otherworldly information in almost every corner of his kingdom. He used strategic insights from Baal and others to outmaneuver rival nations. Some treaties were won not by armies or gold, but by knowing precisely which foreign minister was lying. The demons taught him how to lift stones no human crew could budge. But more importantly, they taught him the geometry of sacred proportion, ratios that resonated with cosmic order. According to the text, this is why the temple's design had such a commanding presence. Spirits connected to the stars revealed celestial cycles. Others explained the hidden properties of ores and metals, contributing to advances in weaponry, agriculture, and medicine. Some demons knew the fears, ambitions, and weaknesses of human rulers. Solomon allegedly used this information to keep hostile nations off balance, sometimes with diplomacy, other times with well-timed displays of wealth or supernatural coincidence. Each demon created a personal seal, a geometric signature that anchored its identity and authority. These weren't random doodles. They combined triangles, circles, Hebrew letters, planetary symbols, and mathematical ratios. Drawn correctly, at the right hour, with the right materials, the seal acted like a cosmic summons. By the time he finished, Solomon had built the closest thing humanity has ever had to a guidebook for the invisible world. The notes show he spent years documenting this strange hierarchy, long enough to uncover secrets even he wasn't prepared for. What demons told Solomon about the true nature of reality. Perhaps the most jaw-dropping revelation in Grok's translation wasn't about magic, rituals, or Solomon's legendary ring. No, the real shock came from what the demons claimed about existence itself. According to the forbidden passages, Solomon wasn't just a king dabbling in mystical arts. He was a researcher, an experimenter, a cosmic cartographer trying to map out the hidden structure of the universe. And the creatures he commanded were more than mythological monsters. They were eyewitnesses to the machinery of reality. According to the grimoire, the demons told Solomon something humanity wouldn't seriously consider until thousands of years later. Reality isn't a single flat plane. It's layered. They described existence as a stack of dimensions, each vibrating at different frequencies, like strings on an unseen cosmic instrument. The physical world, the one humans cling to as real, is actually the slowest, heaviest, densest vibration of them all. The spiritual realms, faster, finer, less constrained. And yet every layer overlaps in the same space, like radio stations broadcasting together. You only hear the one your receiver is tuned to. Casually, as if discussing the weather, the demons explained that angels, demons, elemental spirits, and even strange unnamed beings inhabit these higher vibrational layers. Not metaphors, not symbols. Actual realms filled with entities that move through reality the way fish glide through water. Here's where it gets unnervingly specific. The text describes places where the boundary between worlds becomes thin, geographic pressure points where the dimensions sit so close that contact becomes possible. Certain times of year, planetary alignments, and ritual conditions can weaken the barrier even further. When all three align, the book suggests the veil practically trembles. These weren't random ideas. They were coordinates, instructions, warnings. And Solomon, being Solomon, didn't ignore them. He used them. The grimoire paints a picture of a king obsessed not with power, but with understanding. He asked demons to describe the physics of their realms, how movement works in a dimension without time, how form behaves where matter doesn't exist, how communication happens without words. The demons responded with what they called laws of the unseen, metaphysical principles that humans had never recorded. Using this forbidden knowledge, Solomon attempted something audacious even by today's standards. He tried to map the entire universe, including the dimensions humans cannot normally perceive. And here's where things get wild. Grok's translation suggests that Solomon's temple wasn't merely a religious structure, it was a precision-engineered portal complex, built on a location where the dimensional fabric was already naturally thin. According to the demons, the measurements of the temple, the materials used, the layout of the chambers, even the sequence of rituals performed inside were designed to stabilize contact between the physical world and the higher realms. The Holy of Holies, the most sacred chamber, played a dual role. Yes, it housed the Ark of the Covenant, But the text claims it also functioned as an anchor point, a place where spiritual and physical vibrations aligned so closely that a prepared human could cross the threshold without being torn apart by the energy. Now it suddenly makes sense why only the high priest could enter, and only once a year. To everyone else, the concentrated spiritual energy would have been mentally shattering. In the demon's description, the Ark of the Covenant wasn't simply symbolic, it was functional. Every detail, its dimensions, its materials, the objects contained inside, served a purpose. The Ark was essentially a dimensional stabilizer, a device designed to keep the veil from collapsing during rituals. The forbidden text suggests that its power wasn't metaphorical, it was technological in a way ancient humans didn't know how to explain. This is where the forbidden knowledge becomes explosive. The demons told Solomon that humans are naturally multidimensional beings. Our consciousness doesn't stop at the skull. It extends into other realms. We just don't notice it because we're never taught how to look. Dreams? Intuition? That sudden feeling of being watched? According to the grimoire, these are tiny moments when the mind accidentally brushes against another layer of reality. Solomon, through training and guidance, learned to do this on purpose. He developed what the demons called spirit sight, the ability to see beings across dimensions, perceive energies, and interact with spiritual entities as clearly as he interacted with people in his court. The text describes it not as a blessing, but as a skill, learnable, trainable, dangerous. Demons also issued cautions. Opening doors without preparation leads to disaster. Curious people who attempted spiritual contact without discipline risked madness, fragmentation, or worse. Some encountered entities that crossed the threshold with them and didn't go back. So the question becomes unavoidable. If this knowledge was so powerful and so dangerous, who decided humanity wasn't ready for it? And how did they bury a book that refused to stay dead? The truth they tried to bury. Grok's translation didn't just uncover Solomon's forbidden teachings, it exposed a second, quieter story hiding in the spaces between the lines. As researchers dug deeper, they began noticing something strange. Tiny handwriting, nervous scribbles, and frantic warnings tucked into the margins by the monks and scholars who copied the text across the centuries. It turns out the grimoire wasn't merely preserved, it was handled, edited, censored, feared, and occasionally sabotaged by the very people tasked with protecting it. And these marginal notes are some of the most revealing pieces of the entire story. Imagine being a medieval scribe, alone in a dim stone chamber, copying a manuscript that casually explains how a human king commanded demons and mapped unseen dimensions. You'd leave a few nervous notes too. Some scribes even altered the text intentionally, a demon name quietly swapped for a harmless symbol, a ritual step rearranged, an entire paragraph curved around with a slash, and the note, omitted for safety. They weren't trying to destroy the grimoire. They were trying to defang it. The real crisis came when church officials began to understand what the text implied. The grimoire didn't claim that Solomon's power came from rare divine favor. It laid out procedures, seals, incantations, and conditions. Repeatable techniques that suggested magic wasn't a miracle. It was a method. And that was a nightmare for the early church. Because if a king could command demons through a reproducible process, then logically, any trained human could. If the spiritual world could be accessed by knowledge rather than divine approval, then priests weren't the gatekeepers anymore. If reality itself could be bent, navigated, or crossed using techniques that bypassed the church, the entire structure of religious authority started to wobble. The danger wasn't that Solomon was lying. The danger was that he might have been telling the truth. Now you might think, okay, then why not burn the book and rid the world of this cosmic problem? You'd be surprised. They tried. But the grimoire kept slipping through their fingers. For scholars, especially those trained in philosophy, astronomy, and proto-science, the text was simply too valuable. It contained insights on cosmology, psychology, and metaphysics that were centuries ahead of their time. Even theologians recognized its significance. Solomon wasn't a fringe figure, he was a biblical king. Destroying his writings outright would have raised uncomfortable questions, so instead of burning the book, they buried it in plain sight. Monasteries developed coded cataloging systems, disguising the grimoire under titles like agricultural notes or miscellaneous wisdom. Only select scholars were allowed to handle it, and even fewer were allowed to actually read it. The knowledge became both preserved and imprisoned, a paradox that lasted nearly 2 millennia. Grok's analysis uncovered a deliberate multi-level censorship strategy that evolved over centuries. It wasn't random, it was strategic. Entire sections had been rewritten, not once, but repeatedly. Each generation of scribes softened dangerous passages a little more. Many demon names were replaced with titles, symbols, or vague euphemisms to prevent readers from invoking them accidentally or intentionally. Magical seals and sigils were intentionally drawn wrong, mirrored, rotated, or given missing lines. Tiny distortions, but enough to render rituals ineffective. Some events were rearranged chronologically to break the continuity of Solomon's training methods, making the system harder to reconstruct. Despite the church's best efforts, the suppression was never perfect, because knowledge, especially forbidden knowledge, has a way of sneaking out the back door. Some monks made personal copies. Jewish mystics encoded parts into early Kabbalistic tradition. Islamic scholars, regarding Solomon as the prophet Suleiman, preserved surprisingly intact versions of certain passages. Alchemists smuggled fragments across Europe.
Attention! Have you been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma after using the weed killer Roundup? Nearly 11.
And eventually, the printing press turned secrecy into a losing battle. When texts like the Lesser Key of Solomon appeared in the 1600s, the genie was officially out of the bottle. The church tried censorship, bans, and public warnings, but it was too late. Solomon's system had re-entered the world, and now, thanks to Grok AI, we're seeing the full pattern for the first time. Solomon's hidden legacy. When people hear forbidden grimoire, they usually imagine dusty ruins, ancient kings, and long-dead rituals. But Solomon's book? That thing never stayed dead. It leaked through history like a stubborn ghost, reshaped, renamed, reinterpreted, until it quietly embedded itself into the foundations of modern occultism, esoteric lodges, mystical movements, and even philosophical systems that don't realize they're carrying Solomonic DNA. If you look closely, you'll see King Solomon's fingerprints everywhere. Let's start with the most famous secret society of all, the Freemasons. Now, Freemasonry doesn't summon demons or wave Solomonic seals around. It's not that kind of club. But its entire structure is built on Solomon's temple, both literally and symbolically. In Masonic ritual, members aren't just men in aprons, they are allegorical builders working under Solomon himself. Every degree, every tool, every lesson is framed around constructing the inner temple, modeled after the legendary one Solomon built. To the Masons, Solomon isn't just a historical king, he's the archetype of hidden wisdom, the perfect philosopher-architect. Their idea that spiritual growth resembles architectural craftsmanship? Straight out of ancient Solomonic philosophy. They transformed his temple into a universal metaphor for self-improvement. Solomon became their mythic foreman, long after the stones of his actual temple turned to dust. If Freemasonry borrowed Solomon's symbolism, the ceremonial magic tradition borrowed his methods, and sometimes not even subtly. Organizations like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn didn't just reference Solomonic teachings, they built entire ritual systems around them. They used Solomonic seals, demon and angel hierarchies, invocation and evocation structures, and protective circles modeled on Solomonic diagrams. When Golden Dawn adepts performed ceremonial rites to summon archangels or command spiritual intelligences, they weren't being original, they were practicing versions of techniques Solomon allegedly perfected 3,000 years before. Modern ceremonial magic, from Thelema to contemporary occult lodges, still uses Solomonic frameworks. Even when the names changed and the rituals evolved, the DNA stayed the same. Solomon's methods became the blueprint for ritual magic in the Western world. Pick up any serious occult manual from the last 300 years, and you'll notice something uncanny. The diagrams look familiar. The circles, sigils, planetary correspondences, angelic names, astrological charts, they all echo patterns found in Solomon's grimoire. Solomon didn't just influence magic, he defined its geometry. The idea that each spirit corresponds to a planet, the idea that seals encode metaphysical contracts, the idea that sacred names alter spiritual resonance, all of these flow from the Solomonic current. Even many New Age systems, astrology-based rituals, energy work, planetary invocations, trace their roots back to the king who cataloged demons like a librarian, organizing cosmic secrets. Of all traditions, Kabbalah may contain the clearest philosophical echoes of Solomon's teachings. Though Kabbalah evolved independently over centuries, it shares conceptual parallels with the revelations in the Forbidden Book, a multi-layered reality, spiritual realms stacked like ladders, angelic names with specific functions, the idea of accessing divine power through precise speech and symbolic architecture representing invisible worlds. The Tree of Life, mapping 10 interconnected realms, reflects the same cosmological structure Solomon recorded when demons described layered dimensions vibrating at different frequencies. Modern witchcraft and neo-pagan practices also carry pieces of Solomonic technique, often without realizing their origin. For example, circle-casting mirrors, the protective circles Solomon used during summoning, drawing sigils for energy, protection, or manifestation, echoes Solomonic sealwork. A practitioner in a modern coven might think they're using contemporary witchcraft, but many of the tools on their altar would feel surprisingly familiar to an ancient scribe of Solomon's court. Beyond magic, there's another layer of legacy: interpretation. Solomon's grimoire wasn't just a manual for commanding spirits, it was also a psychological map. Ritual structure, symbolic architecture, and encoded metaphors shaped how people understood the mind long before psychology existed. When occultists talk about inner demons, shadow work, or building the inner temple, they're walking paths carved by Solomonic philosophy. His hidden teachings formed the backbone of a worldview where symbols act as mental technologies, rituals shape consciousness, architecture mirrors the cosmos, the human mind is layered, complex, and multidimensional. Modern mysticism still leans heavily on these ideas. And yet, even after influencing centuries of traditions, societies, and magical systems, one question refuses to die. Did Solomon truly command real entities? Or did later generations weave myth and metaphor into something much stranger? Where myth, magic, and history collide. For all the excitement stirred by this newly decoded version of Solomon's life, and the way it's inspiring fresh spiritual movements, there's still a loud crowd calling it pure fiction. And honestly, you can't blame them. When you start reading some of these stories, things get weird fast. One of the clearest Christian threads woven through the text shows up during Solomon's confrontation with the demon Ephippus. While the demon is forced to help build the temple, Solomon asks him a simple question: which angel defeats you? Ephippus's answer sounds like a prophecy ripped straight out of the New Testament. He says his power can only be broken by a man who will be born of a virgin and later executed on a cross by the Jews. It's a wild moment, almost like the story stops and whispers, yes, you're reading a grimoire, but a gospel just slipped in. Greek influence shows up too, and not subtly. At one point, Solomon encounters 7 demons who appear as sisters. They introduce themselves as cosmic beings who dwell among the stars and occasionally descend from Mount Olympus. Their description mirrors the Pleiades, the legendary 7 sisters of Greek mythology, complete with their astrological symbolism. Imagine a Hebrew king interviewing astral beings who also claim prime real estate in Greek mythology. Then there's Obazuth, a limbless female demon with wild, tangled hair, covering her head like a storm cloud. If she sounds suspiciously familiar, that's because many scholars argue she's essentially Medusa in disguise, or at least a cousin from the Gorgon family tree. Her appearance is so visually intense that even Solomon pauses to take it in. Another demon, Anepsigos, pushes the Greek connection even further. While being interrogated at the temple, he casually mentions that he can shapeshift into 3 forms, one of which is the Titan Kronos himself, and he doesn't stop there. Anepsigos also appears as a triple-faced woman resembling Hecate, the Greek goddess of magic, crossroads, and moonlit mysteries. Unsurprisingly, Anepsigos is astrologically tied to the sphere of the moon, making him one of the text's more bizarre and cosmically confusing characters. And it's not just Greek mythology crashing this party. The Babylonian Talmud recounts a similar tale where Solomon enslaves Ashmedai, a demon prince, to help with the temple's construction, an encounter that doesn't end well for Solomon. Ashmedai eventually tricks the king, throws him off the throne for a while, and causes a royal identity crisis that later stories love retelling. Across Solomon's encounters, you find demons from Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, Christian, and even early Arabic traditions. The text is basically a supernatural United Nations meeting, except most of the delegates are monstrous. Solomon interviews dozens of these beings, and some are straight up grotesque. There's even one demon who appears without a head, which raises a lot of questions, starting with, how exactly did it talk to him? Sexual demons show up too. Asmodeus, famous from the Book of Tobit, appears as expected. Then there's Obazoth, a female demon tied to the deaths of newborns and widely considered a relative of Lilith. Some of these entities are known from other ancient writings, but many are unique to this text, making Solomon's demon catalog one of the most eclectic in antiquity. One demon, Abazethebu, even takes credit for hardening Pharaoh's heart in the Book of Exodus. According to him, God wasn't behind it. He was. Now, when it comes to the history of the Testament of Solomon, scholars can't seem to agree on anything, except that it's complicated. Estimates for its creation range anywhere from the 1st century AD to the High Middle Ages. Some argue the text leans heavily Jewish in origin. Others say a Christian writer with Greek roots must have stitched it together. Mid-20th century scholars believed it reflected the Judaism of the 1st century, and that much of the material might be far older than the manuscript itself. But later researchers challenged that view, pointing to the wide range of manuscripts, each altered by a different scribe over different centuries. When you add in the magical terminology, astrological references, and theological mashups, the only safe conclusion is this: the author is unknown, the text evolved, and no single culture can claim full ownership. This brings us to the real takeaway, especially now that Grok AI has reconstructed a unified version of the manuscript. The Testament of Solomon isn't a simple religious text. It's a fusion of cultures, beliefs, and mythologies stretching across continents and centuries. It's a supernatural scrapbook created by many hands, each adding their culture's own demons, gods, and cosmology. Some stories might trace back to authentic ancient traditions, others may be literary embellishments, and some might reflect magical practices that have long disappeared. But when you read it all together, cleaned, decoded, and restructured, you see something scholars never fully captured: a worldview where magic, religion, and mythology weren't separated. They were blended, interchangeable, normal, and that's where the true power of Grok's translation lies. If even a fraction of this reconstructed grimoire reflects real ancient knowledge, then it doesn't just reshape our understanding of King Solomon. It challenges everything we think we know about the ancient world and the unseen forces those people believed they were fighting. Should this knowledge remain buried, or is modern civilization finally ready to confront what Solomon knew 3,000 years ago? Please click the cards on the screen now for more interesting videos.
Pretty interesting, huh? Now, watching all that, it makes you think why in the Bible it says, do not love the world. The world is really screwed up, and uh, I'm not into Solomon. Uh, he was an evil man, and he messed with stuff that nobody should have ever messed with, and people practice it to this day and don't even realize it. I myself was into all the astrology. I was a card reader. I used to read tarot cards, all that stuff. All that stuff is connected to that evil. We weren't supposed to know any of that stuff. That stuff shouldn't have been known into humans. But that's what's on this planet. That's what's on this planet. There's evil everywhere. Evil. Evil everywhere. And that's why it says God says, don't love the world. Love the maker, because he's the one he's gonna either put us away for forever or take us with him forever. I'm not a preacher by any means or anything like that. But I'll tell you, I just I've been doing a lot of study and a lot of this stuff, looking at all this stuff, and stuff like Solomon. People should know. All the stuff that they're messing with is all stuff that's not of God. I mean, there's only two places to go when we die, and hell is supposedly for eternity. That's it doesn't. That's forever and ever. It's nonstop. You don't even get to die. Your soul just goes into damnation forever and ever and ever. And the demons want to take as many of them as they can. Lucifer himself, or not Lucifer, I should say Satan, the only way he can hurt God is by taking the people that God loves with him, you know. Yeah, I don't want to tap into any of that stuff. I'd rather tap into Jesus, the one who's going to save us, you know. Why would you want to tap into something that is not of God? God made those demons, and they were angels at one time. They were angels. They were God's angels. They went up against him. I might even do the War of Heaven again, not tonight, because the war in heaven is like 2 hours and 20 minutes long, but it's insane. That could be, Susie. I don't know. I think maybe when we die, maybe things will be known to us. Solomon was messing with some crazy shit. Really crazy. He was messing with stuff that nobody else would even think of doing. But I don't know what that is. What is Six of Empire? I don't know what that is. Well, not only not forgiving ourselves, but asking God for forgiveness for the things that we've done, not just forgiving ourselves. The one who made us is the one we need to ask forgiveness from. Outside religion, it has nothing to do with religion. I don't go to church. I won't go into the churches. Churches won't even tell you about the parts of the Bible that were taken out, unless you go to like an Ethiopian church, because their Bible is pretty much open. All the parts are still in it. But yeah, I don't go to church. I've been to too many churches. Churches are all about entertainment to keep people in there, and it's about money. You look at these churches and think about how much it costs just to build those buildings, millions of dollars just to build them. You know, it all depends on what information you're looking to acquire. The only thing that I want to acquire is to go to heaven and be with the Lord. That should be the only thing that anybody's thinking about. Not this stuff. you know. like that little boy was saying, we don't know when our time is up. Is everybody ready? Are you ready? Am I ready? I'm still asking for forgiveness for the sins that I did in my life. I still ask for forgiveness. You know, we need to walk. The only way we keep God with us is to walk with him, is to walk in his light the way he walked. And if you look at like Enoch, how Enoch walked with God. Enoch didn't even have to die to go to heaven. He was so close to being with God. He lived for God. We don't do that. I mean, we don't live every moment for God. I know I would like to and I want to, but I'm not Enoch. But Enoch was God was so pleased with him that he just took him. He didn't have to die. Also Elijah. It's only the only two human beings that didn't have to die to go to heaven was Elijah and Enoch. Everybody else had to die. You know, it's just we can't think of our own way on how we feel comfortable. We have to think of how God wants us to be. How God is. And that's the truth. A lot of people say, well, I have my own way of thinking. That's not really the way it is. It's to think the way God thinks, and the only way to know what God is thinking is to read about him. Yeah, well, I don't know if people return here. I as far as the Bible's concerned, it doesn't say anything about us coming back and being human again and again and again. And there was a time when I used to think about past lives and stuff like that. I used to teach psychic development. I used to do guided meditations, um, and past life regressions through hypnosis. And that's all stuff we shouldn't even be messing with. It doesn't say anything like that in the Bible. It's just not of God. It's of something else. Like the stuff that Solomon was messing with. But that's just me. That's just me. Yeah, well, walk with love. That's not enough. You have to have all the love for God Himself and Jesus. We have to love Him. We have to love Him as much as we can love anything, more than yourself. And it even says in the Bible, people will be lovers of themselves. We're not supposed to love ourselves. We're supposed to love the God who created us, appreciate our lives, because we wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for Him. So, when we look at the world, when we look at the clouds, we look at the trees, we thank God for all that stuff, because without Him, it wouldn't even exist. Not to love the world, love the one who made it. The only way is through the love of Jesus, not just love itself. It's loving Jesus according to the Bible. And like I said, I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm just telling you how I feel about it. Um, there was a time where I believed in God, and then I didn't believe in God. And then the more I studied, the more I said, well, I went back to believing in Him again. It's not just love; it's loving God, because you wouldn't even be able to love anybody if it wasn't for God making you, right? So why wouldn't you love the one who made you the most? You know what I mean? That's how I see it. Don't love yourself, love the one who made you. And I'm not saying you shouldn't love people either. There's nothing wrong with loving your husband, your parents. You want to love anybody, everybody. But number one has got to be the Lord. If you believe that He exists. If you believe that God exists, then why wouldn't you love Him first? Right? right? I mean, I was holding my dog just a little while ago, just like scratching her back. And I wouldn't be able to do that without God giving me life. I mean, God gave us all life. You know, God gave us life. We're supposed to love him first. I didn't always think that way, but that's the only way. The only way. And that was the story with the little boy. It was the same thing. Without God, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. It's just so if you can't love God first, then you're loving the world, which is what God said. That's why many people don't even make it to heaven. In Matthew 7, very few people even make it to heaven because they just believe what they want to believe instead of believing what God wants us to do. But that's just no, if everybody loved God, the world would be a better place. You're supposed to take care of yourself, but love the one who made you. He created you. He created you, so you wouldn't even be able to love anybody if it wasn't for him making you. That's the whole point of everything. But that's me. Like I said, I'm not trying to preach, but that's how I feel. We're supposed to appreciate life and who gave us this life. God breathed life into us, and that's, you know, me too. It's a scary, scary thing, Susie. It's scary. It scares me. I still think I'm going to hell. I don't feel like I'm going to get into heaven. But that could also be a demon in my ear at the same time. And I'm not saying I'm getting into heaven or hell. I don't know. It's not my judgment. All I can do is try to love Jesus, try to love God, because that's both one and the same, and ask for forgiveness of my sins, and just try to do right by Him. You know. In Matthew 7, if you I don't know if you've read the Bible at all. I've read the Bible. Um, that doesn't make me any better than anybody else because I've never claiming to be. But I just know what affected me when I read it. If you read Matthew 7, it's one of the most no, God created heaven. God created the heaven. God created heaven and hell. He just passed the word down to so that we could understand. But you may have a different belief, Susie, and I'm not saying you're wrong either. If you don't believe that God created us, if you're saying nobody created us, then maybe you believe in evolution. And I don't mean any disrespect to you at all either. If that's what you believe, then you can believe that. And I don't know. I don't know. If you don't believe that God exists, then that's your belief, and I respect that. I'm not going to put that down. It's even atheists. I don't disrespect them either because they don't believe anything. And that's okay. That's okay for them. You know, If you don't believe that God created you, then then I understand what you're saying. I understand. I believe that God created everything. Do I understand it? No. Well, maybe I'll understand when I die. Who knows? Then that's your belief, and I respect that. I respect that. Well, I believe that yeah, you could. I guess you could tap into power. Then that book is telling us you can tap into it, but what are you tapping into? Do you know what you're tapping into? Do you know if it's good or if it's evil? No. Not no more than I do either. But we were created. We were born. We were born, so we were created. I don't think you can burn a soul. A soul can't be burned. I think a soul can be tormented in the lake of fire, but souls don't die. Even if they go to hell, they don't die. That could be, Susie. That could be. You could be right. You could be right. I'm not saying you're wrong. No, I don't feel like you're trying to bash my beliefs. My beliefs. I don't feel that. I think you think everybody's got a brain and everybody thinks what they think. Does it make me right? No. Does it make you right? No. Does it make me wrong? No. Does it make you wrong? No. I can tell you this though. If God does exist in the Bible, if he does, let's just say that it's real. The God of the Bible is real. I would rather believe in him than not believe in him, because the alternative is devastating. It's forever. And you could be right, Susie. You could be right. You could be right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I would not say that you're wrong, because there was a time when I thought like that too. There was a time when I thought like that too. In the metaphysical world, it's all about energy, and your energy goes to a different place. You may come back to learn this and all that. I've been through all of that. So, it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means I choose to believe differently. But that doesn't make you any less of a human than me, because you could be right too. You could be right. We could die and it could be nothing. What about that? We could just die. That could be too. But does that mean I'm right? No, because I don't know. Nobody's come back to tell about it. So who knows who's right? There's how many religions are there? There's hundreds of religions, and everyone thinks that they're right in their own religion. Either they're all wrong or they're all right. You know, it's so who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Like I said, I'm not a priest, so what do I know? A belief is nothing but a belief. You know, it's everyone can choose to believe how they believe, and that's respectful. You know, I respect your belief as much as my own. Who's to say who's right or who's wrong? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Everybody can think what they want, but nobody knows. Nobody knows for sure. Anyway, you don't have to believe in anything. There are people that don't believe in anything, and I respect that too. You know, I respect it. I think as people have a need to believe in things and what they want and what they believe in. Yeah, it is a brain bender for sure. It is a brain bender. We're the brain benders. We're the one that bend our own brains. We are the brain benders of ourselves. Nobody knows. It's definitely a mystery, that's for sure. Anyway, what is it? 9:18. I have to get some sleep. I got to be up by at least 4 a.m. to go to work. Drive for Uber. I had a good time though. It was definitely cool hanging with you guys. I'm glad you guys were here for sure. Definitely cool. And we'll do this again. Hopefully we will all figure it out. Sometimes I'm hard on myself, I know. Yeah, sometimes I'm hard on myself. Oh, I'm definitely imperfect in every way. I am not perfect. I wish I was. I wish I was a better person. I always wish to be a better person, and I always hope to make myself a better person. You know, I always strive to be a better person. Well, you go roll your rolls. I'm gonna roll over in bed. I love you too, Susie. You're a good person. You're a very good person. Yeah, you too, Roach. Love you, brother. It was cool having you guys here. It was definitely cool. And anybody lurking in the background, whoever was hanging out and lurking, thank you, Susie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I will. I will definitely sleep well. Maggie's already passed out on the floor. She sleeps all day. She sleeps all night. All right, guys. I'm gonna sign off. Cockroach, have a great night. Susie, have a great night. Enjoy your rolls. And we'll see you again soon, guys. It was a lot of fun. Peace out, guys.